this is the almost regular, kind of Halloween-y, October 31st, 2023 council meeting. Would you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And Madam Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Harmon? Here. Councilmember Friedman?
I and Johnny Lawrence are present.
Councilmember Oscar Gutierrez?
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Alejandro Gutierrez not yet present. Councilmember Stanton? Here. Councilmember Jordan?
Here.
And Mayor Ross?
Here. And Madam Administrator, any changes to the agenda?
No, Mayor Ross.
Okay, very good. We'll go to the consent calendar. Do you have some items to read?
Yes, item 1, subject restructure of Santa Barbara Community Community Housing Corporation's loan on property located at 821 Bath Street, ordinance introduction. Recommendation the council introduce and subsequently adopt by reading of title only an ordinance of the council of the city of Santa Barbara approving a restated loan agreement with the Santa Barbara Community Housing Corporation, California nonprofit public benefit corporation secured by a restated deed of trust, a new 90-year affordability control covenant imposed on real property located at 821 Bath Street, and authorizing the community development director to execute such agreements subject to approval as to form by the city attorney as necessary. Item 2, debt management policy revision, reimbursing expenditures from proceeds of indebtedness for the policy facility, and establish a joint powers authority to issue future debt. Ordinance introduction resolution. Recommendation the council A, introduce and subsequently adopt by reading of title only an ordinance of the council of the city of Santa Barbara authorizing the execution and delivery of a joint exercise of powers agreement by and between the city and the California Statewide Communities Development Authority and other matters related thereto. B, adopt by reading of title only a resolution of the Council of the City of Santa Barbara amending a debt management policy and repealing Resolution 17094. And C, adopt by reading of title only a resolution of the Council of the City of Santa Barbara setting forth the official intent of the City of Santa Barbara to reimburse certain expenditures from proceeds of indebtedness for the upcoming police facility. Item 3, amendment to position salary control resolution 23081 with updates to classification and compensation for certain positions resolution. Recommendation the council adopt by reading of title only a resolution of the Council of the City of Santa Barbara amending resolution number 23081, position salary control resolution for fiscal year 2024 to amend the established salary positions as listed and to establish classifications listed. Item 4, records destruction for finance department resolution. Recommendation that council adopt by reading of title only a resolution of the Council of the City of Santa Barbara relating to the destruction of records held by the Finance Department in the Accounting, Administration, General Services, Risk Management, and Treasury Divisions. Item 5, approval of fiscal year 2023-24 agreement for operation of a countywide library system and appropriation of county per capita funds resolution agreement. Recommendation that council B adopt by reading of title only a resolution of the Council of the City of Santa Barbara amending resolution number 23076, adopting the budget for fiscal year 2024 to decrease revenue expenditure appropriations by $71,187 in the fiscal year 2024 Library General Fund, and increase revenue appropriations by $270,117 in fiscal year 2024 Library County Fund budget for county per capita funds from the County of Santa Barbara for the operation of library services. Item 6, award contracts for construction and authorize memorandum of understanding with the Santa Barbara County Association of Governments for the Cabrillo Boulevard at Los Patos Way roundabout project resolution agreement. Recommendation the council E adopt by reading of title only a resolution of the Council of the City of Santa Barbara amending resolution number 23076, adopting the budget for fiscal year 2024 to appropriate funds for the construction of the Cabrillo Boulevard at Los Patos Way roundabout project. And that's all that. One more item. Item 7, acceptance of grants funds for electric vehicle charging station infrastructure. Recommendation the council adopt by reading of title only a resolution of the Council of the City of Santa Barbara accepting grant funds, authorizing the Sustainability and Resilience Director to enter into grant agreements, and amending resolution number 23076, adopting the budget for fiscal year 24 to increase revenue and expenditure appropriations by $800,000 in the Sustainability and Resilience Department fiscal year 2024 miscellaneous grants funds for electric vehicle charging infrastructure. And that's all the items, Mr. Mayor.
That's it, huh?
That's it.
All right. Are there any items that need to be pulled by a council member? And do we have anyone online that is wishing to pull an item for discussion that you're aware of?
No raised hands for consent, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, well, with that, I will entertain a motion to approve the consent calendar. So moved by Harmon, second by Alejandro Gutierrez. We have the vote, please.
This is a motion by Councilmember Hardman, seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Alejandro Gutierrez for the entirety of the consent calendar. Please go ahead and vote.
Motion passed unanimously. Thank you. Well, with that, we'll go for a report from the Ordinance Committee. Mr. Chair.
Thank you. We discussed and oversaw staff report on the amendments to the AUD program, and we voted to move it along to council for further discussion.
All right, very good. And with that, we will go to our public comment. It'll be 3 minutes at the dais on any item that is not on the agenda but is within the purview of this body. So we have 3 minutes each. We'll start with Marcy Winograd.
Greetings, Mayor Randy Rouse, City Council members Eric Friedman, Alejandra Gutierrez, Oscar Gutierrez, Mike Jordan, and Kristen Snedden. Thank you for your service to the beautiful city of Santa Barbara. My name is Marcy Winograd, and I am an organizer with the Central Coast Anti-War Coalition in Santa Barbara. I am Jewish. I am here to ask you for what Jews call a mitzvah. The literal meaning of the Hebrew word mitzvah is commandment, a divine rule, but the generally accepted definition is that of a good deed. The emphasis is on deeds, not on positive thoughts or wishes or hopes, but on conscious acts of empathy and kindness. I am here to ask you to perform a good deed, a mitzvah, to use your power and influence to appeal to Congressman Carbajal to support a ceasefire in Gaza, where in retaliation for Hamas's horrific attacks, Israel imposes collective punishment, bombing escape routes, apartments, hospitals, denying water, food, medicine, and fuel to 2.3 million Gazans. Half of Gaza is children who had nothing to do with October 7th, but may die, suffer wounds and trauma for generations, bury their parents, grow up determined to avenge Israeli genocide and a 75-year brutal occupation of Palestine. The truth is, you cannot kill the desire for liberation from occupation and imprisonment. The only solution is a political one that respects the equality and dignity of all in Palestine and Israel, all who yearn for safety and security. You may say to yourself, I'm a city council person in Santa Barbara. I address issues related to housing, labor, climate, not war and peace. But we all have a responsibility to stop this violence, this madness that has impacted the lives of Santa Barbans and their friends and families in Palestine and Israel. I know. I've heard the stories. I've heard stories from Santa Barbans with terrified relatives in the West Bank, afraid to leave their homes for fear settlers will kill them. Israel has closed the West Bank's borders as well. Please do whatever you can, however small or large. As a council, pass a short resolution calling for a ceasefire, de-escalation, or as a council member, an individual, making a personal appeal to Congressman Carbajal. Our congressman says he supports a humanitarian pause, but we need an enduring ceasefire to prevent the loss of more Palestinian and Israeli lives, to make the world safer for all of us. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Elena Pascarella.
Good afternoon, council members and mayor. I come bearing some gifts for you, some hearts for love and peace. I am actually a member of the International City of Peace in Ojai, and I've come here to ask you if you knew that you were a member of the International Cities of Peace. Did you know that? How many of you knew that? Well, I'm not going to make you embarrass yourselves and raise your hand, but Santa Barbara is actually an international city of peace, as it should be. And it was done 2.5 years ago in May 2020, 2021. So it's just a relatively new status for the city. And some of the things that, I forgot my phone. I forgot my phone. It's okay. But so what I wanted to do was say that we would like to have peace in our cities and abroad. And right now, this issue of peace is one of the most important issues in the world. And as Marcy mentioned, usually you don't think of that as a city, of how important that is, but it really is, because we are all connected. And what happens in Gaza, in Israel, in the Ukraine is important to us, because if they're not safe there, then we're not safe here. We seem to think that we have this safety, that if we do and fight wars abroad, that they're not going to come here. But we're sending our military aid over there. Our country's spending $885 billion in military aid every year. And you aren't responsible for that. But yet you are, because you're a citizen of this country. And so that's what I'm calling on you, as Marcy did, to ask Santa Barbara citizens to become committed to being a city of peace. And one of the statutes of being a city of peace is trying to promote peace internationally. And that's what we need to do in this situation, is call for a ceasefire, as well as Marcy mentioned. And I ask you as well, being a citizen of the United States, to also call on your congressman, who is Congressman Carbajal, for him to also ask for a ceasefire and to stop sending military aid to Israel. I myself am running for Congress, and you hopefully will be my constituents. And my name is Elena Pasquarella, and I hope that you will take what I've said to heart and please recognize that we are all connected. Thank you.
Thank you. Mikhail Rahim, if I got that correct?
Hello, City Council of Santa Barbara. I'm a 44-year resident of this city, and frankly, this is one of the most deplorable situations I see this city being unable to get some kind of moral authority on the genocide that is taking place in Palestine with U.S. taxpayer dollars, your taxpayer dollars. These bombs are being manufactured here in the U.S. and dropped on civilian populations that are crammed into a concentration camp 25 by 5 miles. The 2.3 million people, 40% of which are children. Every fiber in my body believes this massacre of civilian population by a cowardly aerial bombing that Israel has conducted for 3 weeks. 3 weeks you've had to make your moral fiber stand up? What's the matter with you? It is wrong. This is the worst act of barbarism that I've ever witnessed in my entire life. It's, Ukraine doesn't even come close. You are complicit in genocide. It is deplorable at the very core of it. I want you to call for an immediate cutoff of funding for Israel, an immediate cutoff and ceasefire to take place this week. You have to do it now, because it's a mess down there. You're not going to allow the U.S. Special Forces to go into Gaza as they are trying to right now, but they won't. What's going to happen when the infrastructure in North Palestine is already destroyed? The settlements have been evacuated. You have aircraft carriers sitting in the Mediterranean. They're going to start shelling Lebanon. Then what's going to happen? One of those aircraft destroyers will get blown up, and then what? You have to stop it now. This is absolutely absurd that, thousands of children have died already, and that doesn't move any kind of emotion out of you. What is the matter? Where were you brought up? What are you going to do? I'd like an answer from you, please.
Thank you. Your time's up. Brian Rosen.
City Council, I think it would be most appropriate and proper for you to do such a resolution. The military-industrial complex is robbing local communities of money that they desperately need to help with housing, homeless, and many other problems. We have a terrible problem with people with homeless that don't even have bathrooms, and it's a terrible problem. The military-industrial complex that Martin Luther King said to vote anybody to oblivion who doesn't divest himself from it. He was after the Democratic Party in the 60s, by the way. Of course, he got killed for all that talk about Vietnam, but you can go listen to his speeches, The Three Evils of Society and Beyond Vietnam. In the old days, the Indians, they did some pretty savage attacks. There were good Indians and bad Indians, and good white people and bad people. We don't want to be racist here, but when people are desperate, they do terrible things, and people are desperate. The Indians were desperate, and they did terrible things. And collective punishment, a good old American tradition, stepped in. Kill a couple of white settlers, we're going to wipe out a tribe. It's the same thing over there. It's only making things worse. What did Gandhi say? An eye for an eye makes the whole world blind. All this violence, all this killing, trying to get even by sinking to the other's level. People are desperate. They do terrible things when they're desperate and they're hungry. They don't have water. The electricity is turned off much of the time. It's been an ongoing campaign of ethnic cleansing and genocide going for years. Now, I'm not against Israel, but I am against racism of any kind, including by Israeli people. I'm Rosen. I've got Jewish blood in my background. We're not very Jewish in the sense of bloodlines because the people that settled Israel are pretty white. The Palestinians are probably closer to real genetic Jews. But killing is wrong. It's got to stop. Violence is wrong. Love is the panacea, and we have to have some faith, but we've got to do the right thing and stop the violence. And I pray you do a resolution against this. We're funding this mass murder. It's been ongoing. When some Israelis got killed, terrible, terrible. Everyone's saying, oh, they have the right to defend themselves. What happens to the Palestinians all along? Nobody seems to care. So maybe if we gave them some food and aid instead of just more weapons to do collective punishment without strings attached, I think it would make a big difference. And thank you for listening.
All right, very good. Do we have any speakers online, Madam Clerk?
No, Mr. Mayor, no raised hands.
Okay, very good. With that, we'll close public comment and move to council member committee assignment reports. Anybody have an assignment report? Okay. Very good. We'll move on to the next item. Madam Clerk, have it read, please.
Item 15, monthly update on State Street interim operations.
Mr. Bossi.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor and council members. Brian Bossi. I am the downtown team manager with the city's Public Works Department, and I'm joined today as part of this monthly update by a number of staff members, including Tess Harris, our State Street Master Planner, our City Engineer, Brian Demore, and our City Traffic Engineer, Derek Bailey, as well as Mr. Maurer, and including the soon-to-be downtown team manager, Sarah Clark. And with that, we'll get started. So at our last monthly update, council directed staff to pursue a number of items, including the reprioritization of our cleaning schedule on State Street. Council also wanted us to research the introduction of a shuttle service on State Street, implement temporary bike lanes on State Street, actually, the 8 blocks of State Street that are currently closed to vehicular traffic, and then introduce a drop-off pickup zone at the Granada Theater. So we're going to go through these individually. First, as far as the reprioritization of our cleaning and pressure wash schedule, prior to last meeting, we took it upon ourselves to readjust our daily cleaning. So we are now cleaning from the Highway 101 underpass up through the 600 block of State Street on Mondays. This used to be done on Wednesdays. And so what you would get is a busy weekend, and then with all the activity downtown and the nightlife and stuff like that, you'd have the remnants of that kind of rolling in all the way through Wednesdays. So we've adjusted that. We're now cleaning that on Mondays, which we feel is definitely cleaned up State Street, and that, at least that part of State Street. We are also working with our vendor, our contractor, to look at adjusting our schedule and working the busier blocks 2 times per week and the less busier blocks every other week. So we're looking to put that into effect in mid-November. So it's something we are looking at. Again, both of these items are cost neutral, no additional costs. We're just kind of moving things around and seeing what works best for State Street. You also asked us to look into and research the idea of developing a micro shuttle service on State Street, and we have been doing just that. We have started the development of a request for proposals for a micro transit shuttle on State Street and the surrounding area. I believe we also looked at, the exterior blocks, a block or 2 off of State Street, as well as the waterfront area. We anticipate the release of that request for proposals by the end of this calendar year. We will make sure to include the fact that ADA accessibility is a must. That's non-negotiable, and I don't think that won't be a problem, as everywhere else we've researched, they do have ADA accessibility included. As far as an operational time frame, we are thinking at a minimum Memorial Day through Labor Day. Our hope is to expand on that, at least possibly out another month. But again, that's all going to depend on, is this on demand? Are these distinct routes? How many shuttles are they going to have? Things like that. So we'll get into that detail when we begin negotiations with a provider. And again, that shuttle service, as you are well aware, will require some level of funding appropriation by City Council. You also asked us to look at the idea of introducing a downtown circulator and to work with our transit provider of many years, the Metropolitan Transit District. We had a meeting with them, and we continue to have a back and forth with emails and discussions. And they are working on the return of the downtown waterfront shuttle. It is something that they're currently looking at. The frequency as far as hours, days, how many buses and things like that, that's to be determined. Depends on their resources. They are looking at initially, though, 2 buses. Both of those buses will be accessible, ADA accessible. Again, they want to start kind of small and branch out, see what that demand is, and go from there. As far as an operational time frame, as I mentioned, it'll be on a limited basis, anticipated to begin in the summer of 2024. Council also directed staff to pursue temporary bike lanes on State Street. And so we have been working on that. The bike lanes will be on 8 consecutive blocks. The bike lane design that we're pursuing would include space for the micro transit shuttle, which would operate within those bike lanes. Obviously, the shuttle is going to come later, but we want to make sure in this design that we include space for those if council chooses to pursue that, instead of having to go through, rip them all out and put them all back down. We want to be cost conscious as far as that's concerned. The design will initially include, the initial rollout will be the striping. We will have vertical elements being piloted on 1 block of State Street. We're still working on that 1 block. We think we've zeroed in on one, But as far as those vertical elements are concerned, once we have a couple of ideas of what those look like, we are going to work with our Historic Landmarks Commission subcommittee that was appointed last week, and we met with them actually yesterday already. And then we will also work with our Access Advisory Committee to make sure they're comfortable with whatever vertical elements are chosen. So here is a rough layout of what that would look like. You have the sidewalks here. This is just any block. Each block will be a little different because each block is different. There's space for a parklet. You'll have the pedestrian area, so the 7 and the 9, you have about 16 feet of pedestrian area here. A bike micro shuttle lane here at 6.5 feet, another one going the opposite direction, another 6.5 feet. Then you'll have an additional 9 feet where parklets, and again, this will also be pedestrian. So pedestrians have this 9 feet as well as the sidewalk. So that is kind of a rough idea of what this will look like as we move forward from block to block. As far as the cost, we estimate for the striping about $45,000. And there are a number of contractors who do this. It is a specific skill set of these contractors. We're also looking, because we don't really know, about $10,000 for the vertical elements. The previous pots and things that you see out there, each of those, the big ones, with plants was anywhere from $1,500 to $2,000. And so once you look at a 500-foot block and start to space these out accordingly, that adds up pretty quick. So total cost, we anticipate $55,000. And our timeline for implementation is over the next 2 to 3 months. And lastly, the introduction of a drop-off and pickup zone at the Granada Theater. This is worked into the bike lane design and implementation, so that'll all be rolled out together. Again, just as a reminder, there'll be one-way vehicle traffic on the 1200 block of State Street going north. It will be open 24/7 to that one-way vehicular traffic. It precludes outdoor dining facilities on the east side or the Granada side of State Street. All those outdoor dining facilities on the west side will need some sort of K-rail or similar protection from the vehicles. And then there will likely be some added costs for the design and construction of an ADA access ramp at the Granada drop-off pickup. So you have the pull-out right now in front of the Granada Theater, but it does not have the ADA access component, the ramp component. So we'll be looking at that as well as part of this process. So as far as the action item on your monthly update this month, it's authorizing the expenditure of $55,000 from the Streets Fund for installation of the temporary bicycle lanes as well as the vertical elements on one block. Those bicycle lanes will be on the 500 through the 1200 blocks of State Street. And lastly, per your request and what was included in the recent ordinance was the opportunity for comment at the monthly updates for the historic landmark representative of the Historic Landmarks Commission, as well as a representative of the Access Advisory Committee. And I believe Cass Ensberg from the Historic Landmarks Commission, she was scheduled to be here, but we are way ahead of schedule, so I'm not sure if she's going to make it. We do have Mr. Jim Marston. Oh, we have Charles McClure from the HLC representing. So, Mr. McClure, if you care to come up and talk. And then we also have Mr. Jim Marston from the Access Advisory Committee here.
Hello, Santa Barbara City Council. Thanks for the time today. Cass and I went out to State Street and walked the whole thing from the Granada on down to the barriers, and we just concluded that we believe from the HLC standpoint that the pilot program should include all of the blocks and not just half, and I think that's what you indicated, and that the bike path we feel should be central to State Street and not to meander, and we thought that was the safest to have it over here for a while, and somebody kind of gets used to that on one block, and then it's over here for a while. we think adds to confusion, and that's not being proposed, so kind of a moot point. But thank you. Oh, here's Cass, if she'd like to add some more.
I'm so sorry.
Wait, Mr. McClure, I think Ms. Snedden, you have a question for him? For Mr. McClure.
Yeah.
Ms. Snedden, go ahead, please.
Thank you, and I'm really happy you're taking the opportunity to comment as well. Just from an HLC perspective, is safety something I was hoping, I think maybe comments more on design or?
No, of course, aesthetics, but we just thought practically the meandering path might lead to conflicts with pedestrians where they, like, let's say somebody's hanging out on the 500 block and they're used to the bike path being 6 feet away from the west sidewalk, and then they go up to the 600 block and it's different, that could lead to some confusion and a problem, potentially.
But not a
with-
design problem?
No,
I just want to be
no,
really
no,
clear.
just
It's not an El
safety.
Pueblo Viejo design element issue.
Yeah,
It's-
just safety.
It's
We
a
just thought
perception of safety.
Consistency was everything, kind of like.
Okay, thank you.
All right, and then Ms. Sandsberg? Or Mr. Rossi?
Ms. Cass Ensberg, yeah,
Okay.
also with the Historic Landmarks.
Thank you.
So sorry, sorry to not get here earlier. So I'm not sure what exactly has already been stated, and I did send a little sketch, I don't know, to try to put up on the screen, but I don't know if that was able to be done. I do have one copy here I can give. No? Is that appropriate?
If you have it, Ms. Ensberg, I think we can try to get it on the screen. Sarah, are you able to do that?
Anyway, Ms. Sandsberg, why don't you go ahead with your comments while we're figuring
Okay,
that out.
thank you.
I guess
So-
we'll just circulate this.
Yes, I'm sure Commissioner McClure did a good job of explaining. We went there this morning. We had a meeting with our group yesterday and to talk about and give input about the bike paths was what we understood that was wanted. So Commissioner McClure and I went out there this morning and walked the whole length, and what we came away with, which we also shared with Commissioner Grumbine, who couldn't be here today because he's out of town, that we just think the most simple solution is always the best solution, both from aesthetics and functionality. And as I heard Commissioner McClure say, just having a simple, straight line down the street, in the middle of the street, will reduce the amount of potential conflict with pedestrians. It keeps it all in one place, down the center, and it's very clear. Whereas if you have a meandering path or something like that, you're having to focus on staying on the path, and it's not necessarily safer. So from that perspective, and also from a design perspective, we thought that was what we would encourage. We think that the lane should go the full 8, the full length, and again, to avoid confusion, so it's not like one thing's happening here and something else is happening here. Just keep it straight right down the middle, and that will be the easiest for, no special knowledge required, so to speak. And it also leaves the parts, so we would center it in the middle of the 20-foot lane that's required for the emergency vehicles, which then leaves all of the other area for outdoor dining, bike racks, whatever happened to be in that area, or for pedestrians can then also flow from the sidewalk into that area. So that is our position that we think is the best way to go. And I did do that little sketch to help illustrate that idea. Thank you, and again, sorry to be late.
Thank you very much.
Thank
And
you.
Ms. Snedden has a question for Ms. Sandsberg?
Yes, thank you. And then also in your notes, you mentioned no vertical elements. Is that a safety or is that an aesthetic?
We think that, both. We think that just putting it straight down the middle is going to be very obvious to people where they're supposed to go, put the universal bike symbol on there, but not green lanes, just the symbol. And that, you'd have your walkways, everybody stops at the pedestrian walkways, but we don't think it's needed to have vertical elements. Just put the stripe on there, it's very clear, this is the bike lane, this is where you're supposed to be. If you're not undulating all around, we think that there's a potential that people would ignore it, and they would just go straight through. So, for those reasons, we felt that, and as a experiment, we felt that was worthy to try.
To try straight down the
Just
middle?
straight all the way down in the center, and no vertical elements, just the white line. I don't know if you do white line in the middle or a double yellow, I'm not sure, whatever it is that's standard.
Well, if I could ask a follow-up question too, and I realize you weren't on HLC at the time, but when we had the striping or the green intersections, HLC was not a fan of those.
And we continue to not be a fan of those.
Just to clarify, but straight striping is from, and I'm really just, I appreciate all of the input, but I'm really focusing on the aesthetic input from HLC because that's, I think, the purview, but.
Right, and of course, everything contributes to the aesthetic.
Okay.
We have to consider everything and bring it all together so that the right things are what we see and the things that we don't want to see are what we don't want to see. So as architects and designers, we are concerned about everything, and we use consultants and experts to help us to find out where there's wiggle room. When the previous version that we had the green lanes only pretty much at the intersections, but there was nothing beyond that. So what it's told people, and I think what we experienced was, you go through here, this is the bike area, and now this is all yours. There were no lines to tell you, stay here. But I think every bicyclist I know, and I'm a cyclist myself, you know where the bike lanes are, and you stay within them unless there's some reason why there's like a truck parked there and you have to go around it. But otherwise, you stay in the bike lanes. So we feel that proper bike lanes with white lines, with the bike symbol on there, but not green lines. The green lines are more used when you have a situation of automobiles and bicyclists coming together.
Okay.
So I don't know, I hope that helps.
No, that's very helpful, thank you. And then for the vertical elements, is it the height of them? I mean, if there's a planter there,
Well,
that
we don't
helps
know what they
delineate
are.
the space.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So I'm just, is there a limit on that? Is it just that you don't want something too tall or something the wrong color or what the planter might be? I mean, if it's a vertical element planter, is that an issue?
I think it would be really helpful if we knew exactly what was being proposed. You know, what are we talking about? If we have, I think a lot of the elements that are in the street, the outdoor dining as you're cruising down the street, and there's a lot of activity, and you have an outdoor dining and these various things going on, your tendency is going to be to go perhaps a little slower because you're enjoying the ride and you're enjoying what you're seeing. It's not like you're on a freeway or you're on one of the one-way streets just trying to get somewhere fast. So that in itself can help, all of these can contribute and help to make, without putting constraints around it. And again, the constraints would be, in my mind, for if you were with cars. If you're in a situation where you have a car there, then you want to have some kind of a barrier. But we're talking about pedestrians and bicyclists. And so it really isn't necessary. I mean, UCSB, you've all experienced that. You know, there's the bikes and then there's the peds. So we like this idea for the simplicity of it and for also the benefit of now the sidewalks where the pedestrians are can now flow without having to jump over wherever the bikes are. So if we can contain them to the center, it's aesthetically beautiful because it's simple. We don't have to add a bunch of stuff onto it to, and then but we can't really encroach more into, because the we know that the emergency vehicle area has to be 20 feet, and the bike area together would be probably around 11 or 12. So you're going to have that extra space there that we have to remain clear. We can't put barriers along there. But we can have, we could use the planters that we have. We could maybe space them out and just kind of add more detail to the street. I think the pinch points when you come to the end of the block, those, and we did talk about this in our group, about possibly changing out some of those plants, putting maybe taller elements like an olive tree or something to kind of aesthetically pronounce that end of the street a little better, and also to kind of pinch it a little bit to make people want to slow down. So all of these things together, it's not any one thing, all of them together would help to make this street feel more beautiful and a place that you really are wanting to not go so fast.
Thank you. That was very helpful because I interpreted the no vertical elements to be no planters anywhere.
no.
But that's not, so I'm very glad you followed up on that. And thank
Thank
you
you.
for the detail of walking the entire length and giving us this input. It was invited and very much appreciated. Thank you.
We appreciate it, and except I'm going to have a word with our chair because he keeps being absent on the days when we have these big talks. So, no, I'm just kidding. We're happy to be here and honored to serve. So, thank you.
Ms. Gutierrez, got a question?
Yes, I have a question for staff, and I think, can I ask Mr. Bailey, can I ask him to come up, please? I see him in the audience. Mr. Bailey, my question is, with the bike lanes in the middle, which after seeing this map, and I could see things flowing, but our big issue, or the issue that I hear the most, is about how fast the bikes are going, and we're having these bikes go right through the middle. And if we go with having the bike lanes in the middle and we include, all of these great things that Ms. Casperin had just mentioned, how realistic is it that that flow of bikes are going to slow down?
Mayor Rouse, Councilmember Gutierrez. It's a really good question, and to be honest, we don't know. Personally, I don't think it's very realistic that bikes are going to slow down very much. I think what we really need to do is organize the flow of people on State Street. Right now, it's very disorganized as far as, where bikes can go, where pedestrians can go. There's people weaving, there's people crossing. There's just not a lot of organization to it. And so I think what we're trying to get to by putting in some kind of bike lane is better organization so that people are moving in the same direction with one another. Might feel more like the Beachway, for example, where everybody's staying to the right, moving opposite directions of one another, and there's just more organization to it. Now there's still a differential of speed down there, but there's just a lot more organization. And that's really, when you look at this diagram right here, what the vertical elements are about. It's just a way to eat up some space on the side of the road to get everybody moving into the center, so there's a lot less weaving. Is it going to work or not? We don't know. We're guessing. And if you think back to last meeting, this was one configuration that we showed the council. The other was just 2 lanes, and it was just what we call slower speed lanes with a yellow stripe down the middle, where bikes and pedestrians would share. Even internally, we have some disagreement on which one would be better. Personally, I think it's much more likely that cyclists will probably act a little bit better in this configuration, and they'll stick to the bike lanes. It's the pedestrians I'm more concerned about. If we go back to when we did have the green lanes at the intersections, the bikes actually were using them fairly well. It was the pedestrians that weren't recognizing that it was where they weren't supposed to be. So with this configuration, do I think pedestrians will stay within that 7-foot area? I don't know. My opinion is the other configuration with one right down the middle is probably the better configuration. But like I said, even internally, within staff, we were split 50-50 as to which of these is more likely to work better. But really what we're after is just better organization of movement.
Thank you so much.
Any further questions of staff? What's that?
Oh, I'm sorry, Mayor Rouse. I think, did we still need to hear from Jim Marston before questions for staff?
Ms. Martin, yeah, we can do that.
Greetings, Honorable Mayor and council members. I didn't hear about this meeting until yesterday, and I never received any PowerPoint, so I really have nothing to base my comments on. So I have just some thoughts from what I've learned being a member of the disability community and also a researcher in disability rights. Since Ms. Sneddon brought up the green bike lanes, I want to remind you that you paid money for that. Then they didn't like that, so you paid more money for seal coating to cover up the green, and now you want to put bike lanes back. I wish somehow there was a better avenue of decision-making so we don't have to go back and forth. I mainly want to talk about the shuttle. Many of us live downtown with no cars. The city has been making very good ideas to get many more residents downtown with the Pueblo Viejo area and Paseo Nuevo, and no parking required for many new condos. That's all great, but you have to realize people are not going to move downtown where there's not a decent transit system. Every urban planner knows you must have transit to bring people to a downtown area. We have a great MTD that goes from West Goleta all the way out to Carpinteria. Then we have Amtrak, and we have Ventura and North County buses. But when you get to the end of the MTD, which is normally the transit center, there's no way to get through State Street. There's no way to get to the Amtrak station. I've never seen any place that doesn't have access to an Amtrak station. And then the majority of my problem is there's no access to the waterfront. We're trying to bring visitors here to boost the economy, but you can't think that many people are going to live on or get a hotel room on the beach and somehow walk a mile up State Street under your underpass and then all the way up to like the Granada area. That's bad thinking. We've heard from other people who were elderly or moved here and got condos downtown. They used to be able to go shopping on a shuttle, get to the beach, get to the harbor, the zoo. Those things are gone now. Many people have spent 3 years since the council and the city broke the contract with MTD about the shuttle because they were funding part of that. And you've left a whole bunch of people disenfranchised because they now can't get around. And I just think that we need to get a shuttle, and the city council needs to pay for that. And speaking of money, you're paying $11 million just to pretty up the underpass, but you can't find $1 million to subsidize the shuttle. We need to have a shuttle now, not in the future. We need some time to get from the transit center through town and to the waterfront. You've got workers on the waterfront who could probably use it and not have to drive a car. And like I said, you have many visitors that could use it. But right now, they're kind of stuck. No one's going to walk a mile up State Street, I don't think. So I hope we can do that. Now, if you don't want to have cars on State Street somehow in the future, you can change where the shuttle is. But right now, I think we need to have a shuttle down State Street, funded, help funded by the city council and maybe the downtown businesses. Okay, and to that point, SB CAG has been looking to find out what problems of transportation there are in the county, and they're well aware that we have a big bottleneck here in Santa Barbara once the shuttle was gone. So this, to me, if you know anything about transportation planning, this is what's important, to have a connection between our different systems. And I'll stop on that. Thank you so much for your time. Any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Martin. Question for Mr. Marston. Thank you. Mr. Friedman, you had a light on for a question? For a question, yeah. Go right ahead.
All right, thanks. I have a few questions. If you could pull up slide 7 again. So on this proposal, as I understand it, you have the bike lanes, and then if there was a shuttle, it would come through, so where do the bikes go when the shuttle is going up and down if we have pedestrians possibly in that vertical element where the circles are? Because I could see that presenting a conflict when the shuttles are coming up and down.
Mayor Rouse, Councilmember Friedman, the idea is the bikes and the micro shuttles would share that 6.5-foot bike lane area. The micro shuttles are about 5.5 feet, so they would be roughly single filed. There'd probably be some passing going on.
Okay, so it's wide enough to fit, say you had a bike going up, a bike going down, and the shuttle all at the same time?
Yes.
Okay, and how far away from the shuttle would the bikes be? Within that, are they pretty close where it would be a comfort level for the bicyclists that they actually go outside the bike lane, or?
I don't think so. The micro shuttle will have to operate at a speed that's consistent with what cyclists are traveling. So I don't think there's going to be a lot of speed differential. So the comfort level shouldn't be a concern.
Okay. So I have a few more questions on what's the estimate? Do we have an estimated cost of the shuttle? I remember from the past, but it's escaping me. I should say, don't remember from the past meetings.
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Friedman, we've looked at a few different communities and what they've done. It really depends on how many vehicles you have operating, the time frame they're operating. For example, the city of Coronado just entered into an agreement with a micro shuttle provider that will start, I believe, in March and go through September of 2024. They have 6 vehicles running in their downtown area. The GEM, like the small golf cart type vehicles operating in their downtown. One of those is ADA accessible. They also have 2 8-person electric vans that will shuttle further down outside of the downtown, so that's an added cost. And they're, with those 2, basically 7 days a week, anywhere from 8 to 10 hours a day, it's costing them, their contract is $600,000, so roughly $100,000 a month. But again, it depends on hours of operation, how many vehicles. So we can, with this request for proposals, once we get that back and they assess our downtown, we can kind of work on that.
And then the thinking of having it maybe during the summer is to test it out and see the effectiveness of it and usership.
Exactly.
Okay. And then the MTD waterfront shuttle that gets brought up so much, and I appreciate that gets brought up, is that independent of the shuttles, or would we be looking for one of these models, or what are we doing? Because it's unclear to me whether we're trying to do micro shuttles and MTD or just one.
Mayor Rouse, Councilmember Friedman, it would be both, but they are independent as far as operations are concerned. One would be the micro shuttle. We would have to contract that service. However, MTD, in our discussions with Mr. Estrada, they are looking into bringing back the downtown waterfront shuttle. So that would be on their own, and it would circulate around the downtown and waterfront area. They're still working out a route.
And would that be, with MTD, if they're going on their own, would that include potential city partnership in terms of funding for it? Or are we looking for them to find a way to completely pay for it either through user fees or subsidizing themselves?
Mayor Rouse, Councilmember Friedman, they initially would be operating this with their own funds. They are interested, obviously, in our discussions with Mr. Estrada in pursuing future, getting back on with the city and pursuing joint funding of various operations.
Okay, thank you. So I have a few more questions that are different, and it might be Mr. DeMore or Mr. Bailey, one of the two. It has to do with Nopal Street. In the staff report, it mentioned that the cost for this would come out of the streets fund, and specifically it names a specific street. So I just wanted to get some more information on that. All right, so the first question is, what is the project that is scheduled to take place at Nepal Street, 1200 block? And yeah, what is the project that's scheduled to take place there, and will it be delayed?
Mayor Rouse, Councilmember Friedman, the 1200 block in Nepal Street was scheduled to have a grind and overlay this fiscal year.
And if we went forward with this, we would be taking the funds, and that's where the funds would come from. So what would happen to that project?
That project would have to be delayed to next fiscal year, and there'd be a cascading effect. We haven't identified what street would be delayed in the next fiscal year, but there would be a domino effect.
And then just on this project, because that would be tough to know. So right now, the cost for this proposal is $55,000. If we delayed the Nepal Street to next fiscal year, would there be a cost increase due to inflation or other factors?
Likely about 5%.
So that would push the cost about to $60,000 or so.
Ballpark.
And then if on Nepal Street, we talk a lot in the city about the council and our policy for the pavement condition index, and that we're trying to raise it to a certain level so it actually becomes cheaper to maintain our roads over time. And there's a threshold of about 70 that we're trying to get to. Ultimately, we want to get to 90. What is our current PCI?
Citywide or on Nepal Street?
Citywide.
Citywide is a 66.
66. And what is it on Nepal Street?
13.
13 out of 100.
Yes.
And if it were to, sounds like almost a failing road to me, but if it were to significantly rain, which it might this year, and we didn't do the treatment that's proposed now, could there be additional costs to that road if we didn't do the treatment, in addition to the inflation that we're going to be delaying?
Mayor Rouse, Councilmember Friedman, I think characterizing it as a failing road is accurate. With the amount of cracks in the road, if it rains, when it rains this winter, there's going to be a lot of water that penetrates into the road and the roadway base. So likely be more larger, deeper dig outs that'll be required. But it's hard to quantify that exactly.
And that could lead to even additional costs
Yes.
to repair it. And do you have a picture of the road, just so we could see the condition of the road that we could present? Is there a way, or at least pass it up to council, but all right, and that's all my questions for now. Thank you.
Mr. Jordan. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Let's stay there then. Derek, so are there roads still to do in this fiscal year that are worse than a 13?
Mayor Rouse, Councilmember Jordan, I believe this one is likely the worst that we have planned for this fiscal year. A lot of the streets that we have planned this fiscal year are tied to other projects, and this one was independent. So
you can't, you see where I'm going, right? You can't find one that's not as bad to put off until next year.
Yes.
It's the one that's the worst that is the only one that's not tied to another project.
That's accurate.
Good timing, huh? I have a couple questions then on, Brian, on the Granada Theater drop off. So am I just imagining, isn't there a curb cut there already at each one of those crosswalks?
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Jordan, there are curb cuts at the mid-block crossings, but if you recall, there's that carve-out.
Yeah, is that not the mid-block crossing?
Correct, it's just above that.
Okay,
The crossing is just above that.
So there's a curb there? A
Yes.
full curb there. And there's always been a curb there?
Correct.
And so what's the requirement right now to chop that up and do the lash construction, curb cut out there when it didn't exist before, but that was the drop off?
Mayor Rouse, Councilmember Jordan, there's new guidelines that have just come out. They haven't been put into play yet. It's called the Public Right-of-Way Accessibility Guidelines. And it's things like this, if you're doing more of a operational, programmatic change, if we're not doing any hard capital, like construction, we're still evaluating what kind of triggers there would be for meeting current standards or these newly established standards for accessibility. So right now, we don't actually know. I think it was good that Mr. Bossi flagged that in the presentation, that there could be costs associated with needing to upgrade that to current standards. We may not need to do that, but there may be a desire to do it anyway, so there's also a choice. We don't know yet if it's a hard requirement.
Okay, but my description is correct, right? It was a drop-off before, there's a curb, we're going to do drop-off again, return the drop-off, so to speak, but now there's a possibility we have to take the curb out just for that one place drop-off.
Correct.
One use drop-off.
Yes.
Okay. And then on the piloted one block vertical elements and whatever that means, how long do you see a pilot lasting for that one block?
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Jordan, great question. I don't know if we have a time frame. These are all temporary, and so we're going to see, our goal would be to work with HLC members and the Access Advisory Committee to come up with an acceptable number of vertical elements. Employ those on a certain block, see how it works, and then go from there. Some of them might not, some of them may, and then the opportunity to possibly branch out and do those on additional, the ones that are successful, obviously, move those to the different blocks as well.
So would you say you're going to do one block, right?
Correct.
Which block?
I believe we're looking at the 900 block.
Is that the Bank of America block?
Yes.
Okay. So the intent of those vertical units is safety, right? It's to fill the space, as Derek said, to prevent you from getting outside your lane and taking off at 30 miles an hour because there's a vertical unit there. And so would it be safe to say that if you have a side of the street without a parklet, or it's the other side of the street where you have all pedestrian without a parklet, so I'm going to pick on the Bank of America building just because it's like the scar of 1/3 of the block of an open wall and nothing there. But that particular spot might be more than one vertical element because you have a lot of space to fill, and the idea is to create an open space freeway barrier for bicycles to go downhill, right?
Mayor Rouse, Councilmember Jordan, yeah, that's accurate. It doesn't have to be a continuous vertical element,
Right.
like, we're thinking every 75 to 100 feet, just to eliminate a lot of this.
And that serpentine you're making also plays into the safety too. A serpentine, if people are at least attempting to follow the rules, slows you down because again, I remember back to MIG's initial walk with me before the whole process started was the configuration determines who takes over on the street. And if you have a wide open street with no barriers and cars weren't out there anymore, bikes take over the street, right? So same thing. We're attempting to control all the users so that they're all on a fair playing ground. And both the vertical elements and any meandering would both be an attempt to do that.
Yes.
Okay. And then kind of a dumb question is, why does the land use and the design of a K-rail on a street not qualify for HLC comments, but the land use and the design of some painted lines on the street do qualify for HLC comments?
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Jordan, I think regarding the word qualify, it has been council's request to involve HLC. So right now with the current ordinance and the future ordinance, these pilot programs can just essentially roll out, but it has been council's direction to us to then engage with HLC for these types of matters. So that is exactly why they are
Except that
involved
I
with us.
remember staff specifically calling out K-rails as they will not be part of an HLC. The design of a K-rail or the look of a K-rail will not be part of an HLC design conversation.
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Jordan, that was for the parklets off of State Street. So
Okay.
yes, we were looking at that as more of a safety issue. And
Got it.
since it's a safety component, not bringing that into a design review component.
So the opening of one half the side of the street, the 1200 block to cars, just brings that into that specific issue then and then shouldn't that particular block be eligible for comments on what the fortification design looks like?
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Jordan, we'll give that to Derek.
Councilmember Jordan, the northbound traffic lane that's going to provide access to the Granada drop-off, there's going to be enough of a buffer between that lane and the parklets across the street that we're comfortable that no safety barriers needed. There's going to be quite a bit of space between that moving traffic and the parklet.
Okay.
think
So I
the
read
di-
something somewhere here that the opposite, right? There's something on one of these slides that says there's fortification required for the west side parklet.
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Jordan, I think that was a leftover. That's our bad.
Okay.
Yeah, we've refined the design for that block, and we're comfortable that no
Okay.
barriers needed.
Good. All right. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Ms. Snedden.
Thank you, because that was going to be one of my main questions too, is about, I just want to confirm, so on slide 9, all dining facilities on the west side of State Street need K-rail or similar protection from vehicles. You've determined that that's no longer the case. Okay. Thank you. So, because actually that was going to, well, I'll get to that. But first, I just want to thank you, Mr. Bosse, and just take this opportunity for all that you've done to move this along. And thank you to Ms. Clark as well for a really incredible team there. And it is exciting to see things moving, and always it's not going to be as fast as maybe some of us want. But so I have some questions, and my first one was about the Granada, and with that answers the question about the K-rails, because that was I remember our discussion before that we weren't going to need the K-rails there, so that makes a big difference. And then the changing of the just following up on Councilmember Jordan's question, the drop-off, so that sounds not like a pilot change anymore. That sounds like curb cut, construction, reconfiguration, so we can't just pilot opening that and seeing if it makes a difference, which was my idea of the intention of that, is not making a permanent change, but this is sounding maybe more expensive than I had intended for that.
Mayor Rouse, Councilmember Stedden. So just to elaborate a little bit more on what I said earlier, we need to evaluate whether or not the reopening after this 3-year closure, 3+ year closure period is a trigger to have to do the capital improvements to bring that drop off up to current standards. And we're hoping that we can do the opening and do the evaluation kind of in parallel. And if we need to do capital improvements, that can come later. But the idea would be to not wait, because it doesn't require anything other than some striping in order to do the opening. We could do that quickly.
Okay, that was what I was thinking, is that it would be something quicker. And this is part of a pilot, correct? We didn't put this into the ordinance or make this as a permanent change. Is that correct?
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Snedden, that's correct. This is all temporary pilot.
Okay, so then I just, some ideas that have come, were shared with me since we talked about this as a pilot. And just, I hope you can help me with this, is that the back of house, could there not be a shuttle or just like a little electric golf cart that goes between the parking structure and the front of the Granada instead of opening it to cars? It's something I think that maybe when they had toured some of us individually around, they had addressed, but I'm not sure we had talked about it as council. Was that something we've explored?
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Snedden, we have discussed this with the executive director of the Granada, and they went through a number of their own analysis that's been ongoing for 3 years as to how to get their people, their patrons up to the front door. And anything involving the back of house presented significant safety conflicts, again, because I think we mentioned this last month, that's where a lot of the stage equipment comes in and off. Their 18-wheelers are parked back there. It just didn't present a safe option in any type of configuration that they went through. And I trust them in their analysis because they're trying to get their patrons up front, and this is a big deal for them. So they went through a number of analysis and couldn't find anything from the back of house. And even at the back of house, you still had a lengthy way to get around to the front if you were being dropped off there.
Yeah, okay, thank you. I'm just, since we're talking about it and updating it too, I did, after our last updates on this, I did attend a sold-out performance at the Granada, and it was actually really nice that there was room in the street for that whole line to spill out and in the front. And it, I'll just be upfront that it caused me to sort of rethink if maybe that was necessary or not. So if from my perspective, if there's going to be something major, not major, but something that costs money, a new curb cut or new updates to that, I'm not sure that I am that much on board with it, just for myself personally. And then question about the comment from Jim Marston about transit to Amtrak, the zoo, the waterfront. Do we not have transit to those connections currently? And does it have to do with State Street, or is it a different question?
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Snedden, that's a good question. The blocking off of State Street did obviously inhibit the operations of MTD. As far as transit on a regular schedule to and from the train depot, I'm not aware. I just don't know.
And Mayor, Councilmember Snedden, similarly, I'm not aware. I will say that our transit agency that is responsible for the transit within the city, as you know, is MTD. The shuttle was different. It was at the request of city, so it was a partnership with MTD as an addition to their shuttle services, but they are the local agency charged with transit obligations and responsibilities within the city.
Okay, but that's something we could give them feedback on too while we're talking about it. And then I just want to make sure for the shuttle, thank you for the RFP, and that'll be exciting to see what happens. So, but the soonest the circulator could happen is summer of 2024?
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Snedden, that's what MTD is currently shooting for. Their scheduling with drivers and other resources, vehicles and things like that, generally plans out 6 months in advance. So they're planning for kind of a soft release for the summer, yes, 2 buses.
Okay, thank you. And then just if you would, any of you who want to comment on meandering versus straight and simple from a safety functionality perspective.
Mayor Rouse, Councilmember Snedden, I think we've moved away from the idea of a meandering path, so we're focusing on straight.
Very helpful, thank you.
All right, very good. I had a couple of quick questions before we go to public comment. It kind of threw me a curve knowing that with the 1200 block, you determined that it's going to be safe enough for the parkless to remain without armoring if we open the cars to one-way traffic. Is that correct? Mr. Bailey?
Mayor Rouse, yes, that's accurate. So there's going to be about a 16 to 17-foot buffer between the traffic lane and the parklet, so that's sufficient for safety.
Okay. So as we talk about this, and what's confusing to me is the different areas that we're talking about between State Street right-of-way and private property. But then there's the west of Victoria Street. Is that considered part of this discussion? And the reason why I'm going there is because of the sensibility that that's right next to traffic as well. And where also I'm going with that, as long as we're on the subject, is then if we open to one-way traffic on the 1200 block, will that one-way traffic then be able to continue on State Street across Victoria? Or are we going to keep that closed? And the leading question there is about there are also parklets on the 1300 block of State Street. What would be the status in terms of their safety and armoring and so forth?
Mayor Rouse, good questions. Regarding the 0 west block of Victoria Street, in the ordinance that you're going to be discussing next week, there is going to be something in that ordinance that gives the city engineer the authority to require protection around the parklets in the 0 block of West Victoria, the 1300 block of State Street, and the 400 block of State Street. So kind of the areas outside of the closed to traffic area.
Okay, very good.
So, regarding the circulation, as far as the Granada drop-off, yes, traffic could continue north all the way up State Street.
Okay.
Was there one more question?
That was about it.
That was it. Okay,
Thank you, Neil, for it. Very good. Thank you very much. And with that, we'll go to public comment. I have a few speakers. We'll start with George Lilly, please. We have 3 minutes at the podium. And do we have any online waiting to speak, Madam Clerk? If you would look, please. So, there is a visual aid. There we go.
And Mr. Mayor, there's one raised hand.
Okay, very good. Mr. Lilly, go ahead, please.
Mr. Rouse, Mayor Rouse, council members, I've been in touch with all of you about a year ago. I made a couple of proposals along the State Street issue, and they were all rejected, but I appreciate very much your consideration at that time. It's a year later, and frankly, I think we're a city in decline. And so with that in mind, I'm back. And Kristen, I think a good part of that decline is aesthetics. I don't think we're what we used to be. I thought I'd share a little of that with you. This is Santa Barbara now. This is who we are. When I first came to Santa Barbara, I was impressed with the fact that if you wanted to put a McDonald's up, you couldn't put a sign on the street. I was impressed that if you wanted to renovate a building, the architectural committee drove you nuts for 5 years so that the only way you could do it is if it added to the aesthetics of the city. This is what we're looking at now, and it's been going on for 4 or 5 years. This is kind of my hot button. This is why I came back a year later and said, okay, I love all the great ideas that were proposed at the meeting last year. A lot of them are good. A lot of them are good and will never get done because it takes forever. And I think our problem is more immediate. This is what tourists see when they come to town, and this is what locals get to see when we drive downtown. Of course, you can't really drive downtown. You have to go to the crossroads. And I think what might have really triggered me to come out today, which is not my bent, was the suggestion that the parklets could stay, but they would have to be reinforced with cinder block stoppers so that automobiles couldn't crash into
So,
them.
Mr. Lilly, your 3 minutes are up, so.
Do what now?
Your 3 minutes are up.
My 3 minutes are up? Okay.
Yeah.
I have left you with my comments, remarks, and my suggestions, so you have them.
Thank you very much. Next speaker is Barry Remus.
Possible, or maybe not. Oh. Good afternoon, Mayor Rouse and City Council members. My name is Barry Remus. I'm here with Move Santa Barbara County, and we do represent thousands of pedestrian and bicyclist advocates, as well as sustainable transportation, transit, and rail fans. So there's a lot to kind of cover here today, and some interesting points have come to light, which is really, really great, and really appreciate your questions. They're inquisitive questions to staff as well, too. Move Santa Barbara County, of course, as no surprise, certainly supports that you approve the expenditure for this, for the temporary bike lanes on State Street, as well as for the pilot testing of the vertical delineators. We agree at this time that vertical delineators through the entire stretch of State Street may not be prudent at this time. As it was in previous council meetings discussed, it's better to take things one step at a time, or one bite of the apple at a time. So definitely seeing the bike lane stretch through the full 8 blocks is a good thing, and let's test out the vertical delineators. However, let's go back to keep in mind is what is one of the questions of why we are reintroducing the bike lanes on State Street to begin with, and that is to be able to help control speed and the speed situation. So speed control and bike lane color actually might also be something to consider. As your traffic engineer mentioned, or earlier public speaker talked about universal, but green tends to be the universal color for bike access. So that's something to keep in mind as well. Perhaps the not necessarily full green paint down the road, but a green element. Perhaps the bike signs in the bike lanes could be green. Also, important to note, Move Santa Barbara County has a big concern about the safety aspect of the micro shuttle sharing the same space as bicyclists. We have to remember that the bicyclists that are going to be traversing these bike lanes are not just your hardcore cyclists that are super confident. It's going to be families, it's going to be strollers. Well, perhaps not strollers, but it could be large cargo bikes. It could be Surreys, tourists that are taking these 4-person Surreys up and down State Street. We really need to make sure that we're allowing sufficient space for cyclists and other wheeled users to be able to pass safely around the microtransit. And while we certainly support that microtransit, if it makes stops, we don't want to see young cyclists that aren't prepared smashing into those micro-transit shuttles. On the 1200 block of one-way traffic, we support the one-way, but we do want to make sure that it's ADA accessible. And so the PROAG requirements that have been mentioned earlier, the public right-of-way access guidelines, if that does require the curb cut in front of the Granada, let's be compliant and make sure that we do have that access. As your Access Advisory Committee will mention, it kind of defeats the purpose of introducing, cars dropping off at the Granada if then people out of, getting on wheelchairs then have to move over to a crosswalk to get in. So thank you very much. We do support your approving this expenditure today.
Thank you. Robin Elander.
Mayor, City Council, and staff, on behalf of the downtown organization and the downtown business community, I want to share my appreciation for council and staff's creatively prioritizing increased cleaning and moving towards allocating funds for microtransit and the larger circulation transit options, all in direct response to the desire and feedback from the community. I'm also thankful to see that we are close to going forward with a dedicated bike lane throughout the State Street Promenade. The addition of a dedicated bike lane will support needed downtown safety improvements that have been brought up by the community time and time again, while also supporting an economically vibrant environment for our business community. Regarding the bike lane, I would recommend prioritizing artistic design elements, whether as part of the striping or design the vertical elements to support with community placemaking efforts. Placemaking initiatives in downtown nationwide help bring residents and visitors to enjoy elevated, curated experiences. We have continued to hear the community is seeking a visionary, long-term design, a wow factor of sorts, and hope our pilot downtown bike lane could support however possible in this direction, even if it's just one block of State Street as a test. Lastly, regarding transit, the city downtown and the chamber and Visit Santa Barbara have partnered on a visitor trolley service that will resume for Thanksgiving to Christmas holiday on the weekends. So that's something our community can look forward to. Thanks so much for everyone's really great work on these interim operations improvement. Your work is appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Marston. Sarah.
I just want to clarify a few things. When I said I was in favor of a shuttle on State Street, I'm talking about the MTD fully accessible shuttles with the ramp. And I want you to know that if we have these pedicabs, I don't think the disability community would support that at all unless they were fully accessible. And what I've heard today was, okay, 1 or 2 are going to be wheelchair accessible. And I think the last speaker brought it up, but as far as the ramp at Granada, as he said, if you get out of the car in the pull-off in a wheelchair, you've now got to go back on State Street to get to the nearest crosswalk. So it's dangerous to do it that way. Thank you. I hope we can get something, because Jerry Estrada told me that this new plan they're looking at is only for the summertime and very limited service. We need something full-time, not just for visitors on holidays. You have blocked off all sorts of people who live here from getting around town. So please think if you could find the money to help MTD fund the waterfront and the State Street shuttle. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, we have speakers online?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, we have 5 speakers. We'll start with Hank Ford. Hank Ford.
And for those listening online, if you want to raise your hand in the next 2 or 3 minutes, then we'll cut off online submissions.
Hank Ford, you can go ahead. Hank Ford, you're unmuted. Go ahead. There you go.
You got me now?
Yep.
Okay. Good evening. My comments kind of dovetail in with the first gentleman's presentation about the changing of our town and our communities at large, our county, our state. I've lived in Santa Barbara for about 14 years now, and I know that this isn't politically popular, but I'm not really a fan of the changing of our nation and the browning of it. And I recently got a flyer. It's all kind of spurred because I got a flyer dropped off at my house. It was in my driveway.
Excuse me, sir. What? We're talking about the item here.
I thought this was the public comment.
No. The general public comment is over there. We're talking specifically about item 15.
Oh, okay. I'll come back at the end then.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Our next speaker is Anne Flank, then Jamondre Black. Anne Flank, please go ahead.
Hi. I just wanted to completely agree with the first public speaker that just came up, the gentleman with white hair. Our city is in decline, and I think one of the best ways to improve the overall aesthetic of our streets is to reinstate the Naturalization Act of 1790, removing all the third world invaders and sending them.
What's going on? Okay. What's going on? Who's? The comments, whoever else online, comments have to pertain to the subject at hand. And that is item 15, we're talking about the State Street interim plan. Other comments will not be allowed. Next speaker, please.
One moment, please. Our next speaker is Jamondre Black.
Yeah, hello?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah. Now I'm representing the Farrakhan and the Nation of Islam here. And what
No,
issue-
sorry. No, we're not talking about that. We're talking about item 15. Last speaker, please.
We have 3 more speakers, and now we're at the time.
Okay.
Those
okay.
3 speakers are Sullivan Israel, Tristan Miller, and Ron Robertson.
And once again, for
Jr.
all
DDS.
speakers online, we are talking strictly about the State Street interim plan. You will not be allowed to address any other item. Please don't try. Go right ahead.
Sullivan Israel, please go ahead.
Hi, I'm here to talk about the State Street interim plan. Short and sweet today. I just want to say that Strongtown Santa Barbara local civic group, we grow bigger and bigger every time I make a comment. So now I can say we're at nearly 200 members. We support and applaud the efforts to make State Street safer, and we would like you to spend the money on the bike lanes. We really do believe that the issues of speed control will go away once these lanes are put in and it becomes clear where to bike. I think that there are a couple really important things, though, to make sure that that happens. Color is super important. Another commenter mentioned that having the green color, the vertical element, which doesn't have to be plastic bollards. It can be planters. I've seen that, for instance, in San Luis Obispo. And also the areas that are not the painted bike lane need to be full of something, whether that's street furniture or some sort of artistic element on the ground, so that people just simply don't go around the bike lanes. And also, we are against having cars anywhere on State Street. I say this every time I make a comment, but we are not alone here. Hopefully, council members have gotten to see the many postcards we've sent in. Those are all people who support a completely car-free State Street from at least Haley to Victoria. And I think a very vast majority of the town agrees on that. And they think that State Street is not in decline, and it's been better than ever. I think the parklets are a great thing. I'm sure some of them could be aesthetically nicer, but that is not a reason to get rid of them completely. And also, having pictures from early in the morning when the chairs are still stacked up and people aren't using the parklets yet are not proof that they're not being used or shouldn't be there. Thank you very much.
All right, next speaker, please.
Our next speaker is Tristan Miller. Tristan Miller, please go ahead.
Hi, my name is Tristan Miller. I'm also here from Strongtown, Santa Barbara, and we just wanted to voice our support for the bike lanes on State Street. Very glad that you guys are doing this. I think it will help alleviate a lot of people's concerns about the e-bikes and make it so that pedestrians and bikes can coexist together. I would suggest that you do some sort of meander or at least visual interest on the bike lanes so that it will help people slow down and make a clear delineation between where bikes are supposed to be and where cars are supposed to be, and in particular in the intersections, so that cars know that there's bikes coming through as well. In addition, we don't support the Granada block being opened up to cars. I think there could be some other way, like a shuttle, of getting people to the Granada without having to open the block up to cars and making it less safe for everybody, especially if there's not some sort of concrete divider like we were led to believe initially. The other thing I wanted to mention was the waterfront shuttle. During COVID, the MTD lost all their funding for those shuttles, and so there's currently no bus service at all to the Amtrak station or the waterfront, other than the little commerce one. So there's just nothing along State Street or to the waterfront. So please, whatever you do, also bring that back. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please. Edit.
One final speaker, we have Ron Robertson Jr., DDS. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, Ron Robertson, the Balboa building across the street from you. Just a point, I've done century bike rides and I've got 2 e-bikes. and I built one from scratch. Unless we have a police presence on State Street to really slow these people down, none of this is going to work, in my opinion. I worked for the downtown SB organization at one of their events with the UCSB women's basketball. We had two very large signs saying "Walk your bike." Uh, Half the people didn't. They went on the sidewalk. They went. One guy tried to go through me. Um, I don't know what's with this new culture. If you ride on the frontage roads, you got three bike riders and they're riding three abreast. It's really changed. We used to ride single file. I guess it's all changed. Anyways, one other thing for Ms. Snedden and Mike, sorry, Mr. Jordan. They're talking about the SFCA with putting textured bike lanes in, and textured bike lanes don't work with fat tire bikes. So that's just not going to work. You ride Romero Canyon and do anything else, it's actually more fun to ride on textured bike paths. So anyways, that's my input. I'm done. Thank you very much. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. And our further speakers, Madam Clerk?
No, no, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, very good. We'll bring it back to council for comment then. Here we go. Ms. Snedden.
Thank you, Mayor Rouse. Let's see. First, I have a question, I guess, before comment. So I'll admit that some of those from the slide presentation on State Street don't look great. So my question is, update on design guidelines or refreshing them, or what is the deadline that people have to do that, or where we are in that process?
Mr. Mayor, council members, Seddon. First off, I'm not sure of the exact date of a lot of those because I saw some things
Yes.
like you probably did with the previously approved design requirements. So we are enforcing that through our outdoor business facility license agreement program. So when people are coming in, submitting their applications, we then go out and review that. Obviously, it takes staff, and with things like today, we're here today, and bike and parklets, and we have to do a lot of things with a few amount of people, so we're doing the best that we can to enforce that.
And I appreciate that. So we're seeing a steady improvement, and we do have design guidelines, and people are being informed of that, and they should be, the ones on State Street should be improving with time.
You have design. There we go. Everything out there, currently out there right now today, is compliant with they're not guidelines, they're design requirements. We took that step, I think, September of 22. They are requirements. It's not an option anymore.
Thank you. And then as a question follow-up on that, we at one point said that those that were existing structures could keep their rooftop structures, but that had a sunset, or did it not? If you can remind me.
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Sen, that was for existing.
For existing, okay.
If they were in place at the time you made the design requirements, approved those,
okay,
they stay.
Thank you. Okay, so then are we looking, just for comments then? I can let go of the Granada drop-off for now. If we want to wait until we try the microtransit and see if that's a way that people can be dropped off. I don't really want to make, in a pilot period of time, any structural changes to the street. That might just be a delineator line, and it's accessible now with where the cutout is. So I don't know how colleagues feel about that, but I have less urgency now for that if it is actually possible that we could maybe try the microtransit first and then see if that solves the problem on the street. I did hear from the bicycle community that maybe the color green and the suggestion that it might be in the bicycle logo and not necessarily the lanes, and I'm interested just in a follow-up question if you have already chosen a color or a pattern, or is that to be determined?
Mayor Rouse, Councilmember Sneddon, I'm sorry, I was
Sorry.
having, your question was about what color will the bike lanes be?
If you know yet, or,
There'll be no pavement color. They'll just be the stripes themselves. So there'll be white on the edges, and there'll be a yellow line dividing the different directions. So that's all the color there will be.
and then there will be bicycle symbols?
There'll be little stencils
Okay,
of some kind, but
stencils.
they'll be modest.
Okay, thank you. And then the yellow stripe won't be the wide street stripe, or it will be a new stripe?
It'll be a new stripe. It will look something like the new bike path on Las Positas, where it's a skipped line. The scale of it is smaller than you would see on a street.
And so then the stripe that's there now will be scraped?
All the striping has been already scraped off of State Street, so we have a blank slate to work with.
Okay, thank you. So that was the end of my questions there. I think the micro transit, it sounds like, could be going slow enough so that it can coexist with bicycles, and it wouldn't be coming that often, so it would be sort of intermittent and slow moving. Okay, and then how many of them would be ADA accessible? Is it all, or?
Mr. Mayor, Council Member Sneddon, that would be a discussion we would have with the providers. Currently, for example, down in Pacific Beach within the city of San Diego, I believe they have 4 running and 1, these are on demand. So again, that's the other question. Are they going to be on demand or a set service route? And they have 4 currently working on demand, and 1 of the 4 is ADA accessible.
Okay, thank you. So I think just as those are coming in, I think I'll say for my own comments that the priority should be ADA accessibility, since that's, from my perspective, the main reason that we're having the urgency to introduce them. So that's the need that I see the most that needs to be met. So I think that should be a priority. And then in terms of enforcement, I'll agree that I mean, if we're doing pilots, we could pilot or try, a 2-week concerted effort of enforcement, of education and enforcement, and just see what that does. 2 weeks of weekends, or whenever it's the highest capacity of younger people, especially who haven't had driver's ed, who don't know the rules of the road, and it could be just, I'm not sure how to address that, and I would leave that to internal. I don't know if that's police or ambassadors or who that would be, but I really think it's time that there needs to be somebody stepping in. And yes, thank you.
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Sneddon, we at the police department have done those concerted, we call them directed patrols, focus areas, numerous times throughout the downtown corridor, and specifically for bicycle education, outreach. We continue to do so on a variable basis because we don't want to be predictable.
Okay, thank you. And then while you're here, maybe I could ask you a follow-up question of, is there a way for us to reach parents or through the schools? Or I think a lot of people aren't even aware of the age limits or how fast they're supposed to be going, or how easy it is to remove the governor on a vehicle. And might there be something we can do for parent education?
Again, Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Sneddon, we have partnered with the school district, and we have continuing ongoing communication with the school district. They are wonderful people. We have outreach to their teachers and their security aides, explain to them the different things. We have a lot of ambassadors throughout the community that are trying to get our youth and our young adults and anyone that has an e-bike to understand the concerns and the dangers, just like we try to get people to wear helmets. So our partners at the fire department have done the same thing. So I would say, yes, we are using our partners in the community and in the school district, and continue to do so each and every week.
And
Thank
Mayor, as
you.
Councilmembers, then in addition to that, our Sustainability and Resilience Mobility Coordinator is also working on a guide for parents when thinking about purchasing an e-bike for children that we hope to distribute to let them know what is legal, what's not legal, tips for what to buy, talking about things like battery safety, helmet requirements, that kind of thing, to try and further provide education in that realm as well. So we're bringing it from a lot of different areas to try and make sure we reach the broadest possible audience.
And Mr. Mayor, I'm going to hop on that as well. From another angle, our transportation planning staff has produced a number of videos. Ms. Jessica Grant and her team have put those together along with City TV and pushed those out to the community. And they also work very closely with Mr. Remus and Move Santa Barbara County as well to get that out to the schools.
Perfect. I'm so glad I asked because I wasn't aware of all of those different avenues of addressing the education on this, and I really take this moment to appreciate the gentle approach. So I think, thank you for that update. I wasn't aware.
Mr. Friedman.
All right, thank you, Mr. Mayor. First, I just want to thank you, Mr. Bossi. I wasn't aware that you were retiring. But I really have enjoyed working with you going all the way back to over a decade ago when I was on the Harbor Commission and getting to know you during that time. And I understand with your family and your son that you need to be there for them and you're moving. And it's a loss for us here at the city. You've been a great public servant in all my time working with you, so I just wanted to appreciate it because I don't know if I'll have another chance to do that, especially publicly. But thank you for your service to the city all these years, and my best to you and your family in the road ahead for you. So. And then, so I appreciate staff, so I'll try to organize my comments. I'll just start first with the issue that Councilmember Sten brought up on the Granada. There's no way I would support going back on that. I mean, we made the decision when the Granada was here. They're not even here today. My conversations and then the public hearing, there really isn't a viable option for the shuttle service to get them around. And it is an ADA type of issue, accessibility issue, and we want to be able to have as many people going in the front, just like everybody on an equal access. And to go back on the premise that we're going to use the shuttle, which is going to kind of get into some of my other points, we don't have any funding for that shuttle, and it could cost upwards of $500,000 identified. And that has to come from somewhere. So I'll start with today. I mean, we're struggling to find $55,000. And we learned today that we're taking it from a road that has a pavement condition index of 13 out of 100, which I didn't even know our roads were that low. And it's a failing road. I did a double take when for the record, I did ask staff ahead of time, so I knew what the answer was going to be, but I actually did a double take and had to go back and verify that they didn't change the metric of how we're rating the roads like to something new when I heard it was 13, because we'd always talked about, in the 50s that's where we were headed, but that's where it was. So we can't even, and the thing is, if we fund this today at the $55,000, that's to paint the bike lane. It's going to cost us at least $60,000 next year when the road comes in. But as Mr. Derek Bailey said, it's a cascading effect because the project that was supposed to go next year is going to get delayed, and that's going to have increased costs. So we don't even know how much this is really going to cost based on the cascading effect of delaying project after project. And, that is going to affect all of our districts because we can't expect just one district to absorb all this. My understanding is that this project's in District 4, Paul Street, and where the work was supposed to be done. But if we start cascading, it's gonna impact all of us when it goes back to our constituents who have bad roads wanting us. And I don't have a good answer for them. And again, that's just $55,000, and we're trying to fund a shuttle, we're trying to fund all these other things. And so as we look forward, I also agree with Mr. Marston's comments. I appreciate he brought him that we painted lanes, unpainted them, or repainted them, took them away, now we're painting them back. We're also adding vertical elements on State. And you see the pictures this morning, and yeah, some of those have changed, but that's what we see when, a lot of the time when they're not, with the presentation by Mr. Lilly in public comment, the photos, that's what we see a lot of the time when they're not in use. And a lot of those aren't in use in the mornings or in lunchtime. I just feel we're adding more clutter in a way to State Street. And I know I'm in the minority on this, but the other thing too is with the waterfront shuttle that the MTD, they might be able to come back and get that. I think that is the best way to address the issue of mobility, and it opens up the waterfront. But I would expect that at some point it is going to have to be a partnership again with the city, because they have funding challenges just like we do. They have compensation issues for their drivers and others that they need to address, just like every agency that is out there. And I would expect that somewhere down the line it would, if that program was to come up and running, we would be expected. And I think it would behoove us to be a partner in that as well, because we're talking about something that benefits the city. But we're just not there. So you're adding up all these costs. You're easily, with those two, $1 million plus that we don't have earmarked yet. And so I would request that if there are 4 votes, which there likely are tonight, is just take it out of general fund reserves. I say that because I don't see another option, unless Mr. Jordan has another option. You always have something up your sleeve, Mr. Jordan, but you're not wearing sleeves today, so maybe you don't. Because I don't feel we should be delaying it, but it's the least worst option, because we're already in a budget deficit. The numbers came in last year, and we're actually under by about $1 million, and our revenues are flattening out. But to start going into the streets funds for something as small as this, when we're trying to look at the $500,000 or so that we're going to need to do all the other work, it's bad precedent. And so I'll wrap it up with a quote from the one and only Johnny Lawrence from season 1, episode 1 of Cobra Kai. And hence the outfit today was somewhat intentional, but it is the best one I could come up with. But if we were to go down and start using the streets fund to fund all this, it sets a precedent. And so here's the quote. I would say, and this is from Johnny Lawrence, "Are you sure you're ready? Because once you set this path, go down this path, there's no turning back." And if we started raiding the streets fund today, it's going to be easier and easier to do it. So for now, until we could come up with a funding plan, I would hope that we would just take it out of the general fund reserves for today. Thank you.
Mr. Jordan.
Should have worn that long sleeve outfit, huh? I'm still married to the Granada approval, but I don't think you're working hard enough on this. So, when you look at that slide 7 with the straight lines drawn every place, and my memory might not be good, but I think we're only talking Arigatos parklet on the street, on that whole block, right? And that's uphill from Granada, right? Sound right?
Arigato and, sorry, Mayor Rouse, Councilmember Jordan. Arigato, Daisy, and I think that might be it.
So is there not an opportunity there to put a ramp in? Like I swear I've seen at Granada, a metal ramp, a really nice diamond steel metal ramp, and move the car drop-off sideways, however many feet you need to, and then serpentine your bike and pedestrian part to the west. Follow what I'm saying? Just kind of whatever I need for a parking spot for a car drop-off and a passing place. Determine how much space you need for a ramp, which there's been a ramp there on the street in the past. It's like 5 feet, 4 feet, something like that. And probably not legal because it didn't have rails, but they could build a legal one. They, not us. And you just shift everything to that side because it's open, I think it's open street all the way to the curb on the other side of the street at that point, right? And If you have to cut down on the pedestrian part over there, that's 7 foot in the schematic, okay. Drive the pedestrians in that point, that one pilot block of the bike lane area, drive them onto the sidewalk, with the configuration, make them walk on the sidewalk there, and then they can come back out on the street on the next block or further down the block. And I would rather see that than make a permanent change to that block for a pilot program and uncertainty on whether we really have to. And that uncertainty, I think, would have to be carried over to New Vic, other places. I mean, you guys probably have a better idea of how many other places you have these little drop-off carve-outs that every one of them would have to have permanent curb work. So when that comes, I think that should be part of your big plan, not a one-off like this. But I am committed to still having a drop-off there. And I just think there's got to be the whole thing is about space and using the space. And so let's look at not 2 bike lanes down the middle of the street with this on that side and this side. Is there space to shift that stuff to the west and still have, maybe you have to put a K-rail in there to separate the traffic from whatever you're shifting over, whatever you think. But I think there's designs there that still need to be looked at. I agree with robbing the streets fund, and I'm not going to say go into the reserves, but I think we should be doing both. We should be doing the bike lanes, and we should be paying for Nepal Street. And if we have to, we send this back to the Finance Committee to have a full discussion on where the money comes back. This is, to use one of my favorite terms for the mayor, just the chickens coming home to roost. Because we should have been way out in front of this on what we were doing for our resources to support this street a year or 2 ago. We should not be arguing about or discussing, little teeny dollars amount that are exponentially growing to larger amounts, because we weren't out ahead of realizing that we needed programming money, we needed infrastructure money to make not only whatever the permanent change is going to be but also to have money to try pilot programs and to support what's on the street right now. So I'll take 1/7 of the blame for that, because it should have been pushed harder, I think. What else? I like everything else you've talked about today. I like the vertical elements. I like a bike lane down through there. Mr. Lilly made me sit through a bunch of slides, and I'll have to confess, as I think I have probably before and before, there's like only two slides there that bothered me. And that's, the one with the corrugated steel and the rug merchant. Everything else is a draw to me. Everything else is a draw to 8 out of 10 people that I talk to. And I can't help but think you're not following along, because several weeks ago, we set in place both outside of State Street and on State Street. Maybe we haven't done the State Street one. We're getting ready to do the State Street one. But everything's going to go through HLC on a project-by-project basis for each parklet or each on-street facility. So I think we're getting to what exactly some are asking for, other than just removing everything and going back to a street. But I don't think you can just make that use decision, because that use decision has been made by this council. The implementation of that is, what is it going to look and feel like? And that's a burden we're going to place on the HLC to figure out what that looks like. So I think I got everything.
Ms. Harmon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to be very brief because I have a class Halloween party I have to get to. Couple things. In general, thank you very much to staff for your work on this. I would say generally I am in agreement with what you presented today. I too agree that the Granada drop-off is critical. If there is an option to make a non-permanent ramp, whatever that is, that would certainly be my preference. But if we don't have that option, I would fully support that drop-off moving forward. We've heard so much about its necessity, and I think I'm still committed to it. I want to also highlight, as Councilmember Snedden did, the importance of the microtransit accessibility. I am comfortable with the coexistence of the microtransit as it's been described and the other users of the street. I think our engineer's assessment has given me confidence in that, so really appreciate that. That was one of my big questions going into today. And then on the bike lane, I also support what's been proposed here. And in contrast to, I think, a couple of the public speakers, I really would like to see the vertical elements included. To me, I think that's kind of a key differentiator between what we are doing with this pilot and what's been done in the past. So I really would like to see that, and I like the idea, actually, of this coming from general fund reserve money, so very much support that and would be happy to vote as such today. Thank you.
Okay, well, as far as the Granada drop-off goes, I mean, that's not only essential but agreed upon, but we also have the season of the Granada, which is happening right now, so that needs to happen for their subscribers, because that's who uses it, and it's one of our few nods to the disabled community in this whole process. So that's immutable. We have to do that for sure. As far as the paint and the striping and whatnot goes, I've just heard so many versions of what people agree on and not agree on, including what color the paint's going to be. And as I look at where the SSAC is now, it seems like we're getting pretty close to coming to some conclusions, especially on what to do with those upper blocks. We are going out of our way to make things way more complicated than we have to. This isn't that complex of a problem, but we're really, really trying to hang on to something for whatever reason. So I can't possibly support, please, my colleagues, let's not spend the money on painting these stripes, $55,000 right now, particularly if we have to not pave Noble Street or do something else with that money and dipping back in the reserves to do it, particularly when we're probably going to be changing it up pretty quickly. Hopefully, as the SSAC finishes their work, maybe we'll come to consensus and get moving on what they come to, or what the TCC comes to. That's really important. I just hope that looking at Mr. Lilly's pictures, which we're all very painfully aware of, I mean, I'm hoping personally that someday we revert back from the county fair to a city. We get our architecture back, we get our look back. I think the SSAC is getting close to wrapping up the work, so I'm encouraged. But as we sit there and go through these machinations of trying to invent ways to do something that I'm not even sure is appropriate to do, I'm really wondering why, and why we're looking at things that are not simple and more expensive and take a lot more staff effort and time. So I really would hope my colleagues can hold off on the painting, at least the $55,000 for now. Let us get Noble paved and move on to other priorities. Ms. Snedden.
Thank you, Mayor Rouse. And I appreciate your comments with the expenditure, and especially given the financial situation we're in. However, I think this is a safety concern for our whole community, and we've certainly heard in enough comments that the need to address the bicycle, pedestrian, mixed-use safety there. So I'd like to make a motion to authorize the expenditure of $55,000 from the general fund for the installation of temporary bicycle lanes on the 500 through 1200 blocks of State Street.
Second.
Excuse me, Ms. Bjork. No.
If it passes, I'll make a comment.
Okay, very good. All right, we have a motion on the floor from Ms. Snedden. Second by Ms. Harmon. Any other comments to the motion? Okay, we'll have a vote, please.
Very good. And to recap the motion here, this is a motion by Councilmember Snedden, seconded by Councilmember Harmon, to authorize expenditure of $50,000 from the general fund, $55,000. $55,000 from the general fund for bike lanes on
for installation of temporary bicycle lanes on the 500 through 1200 blocks of State Street.
Is it possible to, thank you very much. Okay, this is a motion by Councilmember Sneddon, seconded by Councilmember Harmon, to authorize expenditure of $55,000 from the general fund for installation of temporary bicycle lanes on the 500 through 1200 blocks of State Street. Okay, go ahead and vote, please. Let's see. There we go.
Motion passes 5-2, Freeman and Rouse assenting.
Mayor Rouse, we make our budget adjustments by resolution, so we will need to bring back a resolution to accomplish this budget adjustment, and we will do that on a future consent agenda. It will not slow down the expenditure.
Very good, thank you. Alrighty then, we'll move on to the next item, please, Madam Clerk.
Next item is item 16, interviews for city advisory groups.
Alrighty, Mr. Lopez, didn't quite recognize you there, big guy.
Mayor Rouse, do you want to give your council like a 5-minute break just to stretch their legs really quickly?
Guys want a break? Okay, so we'll do 5 minutes. We'll be back at quarter after.
Lopez, are you ready to roll? Okay. We'll start out with Access Advisory Committee. Is anybody here for Access Advisory Committee? Yes. Would you come forward, please, Mr. Marston? And we're going to try to keep everybody to about 3 minutes if we may. So go right ahead.
Honorable Mayor and council people who are here, greetings, and I'm asking for reappointment to the Access Advisory Committee. As the council reports have shown, we have done a lot of growth to serve our community with all the activities we've done in the last couple of years. We have a great staff, Brian Demore and Sarita King. We now have hybrid meetings and monthly chair and vice chair meetings with Brian and Sarita, which are very helpful to get the agenda in order. We have terrific members who work well together, and we have a bunch of different ad hoc committees. Examples are, we increased accessible parking, established the first list of accessible requirements for parklets, pushed for the ADA transition plan updates. Sidewalk Safety Committee has pushed tactile domes, curb cuts, parkway infills, and accessible pedestrian signals, which are now mostly yearly projects. I've been honored to be elected chair during my entire last term. My qualifications are in my written statement to you guys, but in quickly, before my visual impairment, I worked for 20 years in civil engineering doing code compliance. Later at UCSB, I was on the ADA committee. I worked with the VA hospital doing research to help disabled veterans. My academic research for the last 30 years has to do with increasing public access to urban opportunities and increased mobility. I believe my knowledge of the ADA, the CBC, and Title 24 would greatly increase the ability of the AAC to better understand and interact with city staff pertaining to increasing access in the city and creating a more welcoming environment for residents and visitors. I hope to continue these efforts to make the city a more welcoming place for our vulnerable elderly and citizens with disabilities by giving these accessible matters the attention they deserve. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any questions for
Any
Mr.
questions?
Marston? All right, thank you. Thank you for your continued service, or your attempt to continue your service. Anybody else for Access Advisory? Move on to Architectural Board of Review. Mr. Whalen?
Mayor and council members, my name is Dennis Whalen. I've happily served my first appointment at the ABR for the past 4 years. It's been a pleasure to be of public service in this role. Briefly, I'm a native Southern Californian, licensed California architect, schooled at California institutions. The last 30 years of my career were at the UC Santa Barbara, where I began as a campus planner and ended as the associate campus architect. I was charged with running the campus design review committee, writing staff reports and agendas, coordinating meetings, as well as contributing as writing the long-range development plan, neighborhood plans, and reviewing project designs for compliance with campus standards, and doing the campus bicycle planning work, which was probably my most enjoyable task. You all can identify with the time it takes to learn the procedures, policies, and guidelines to operate intelligently in a public forum. It took the good intentions and personal friendships of the other board members, fellow architects, landscape architects, planners, and citizens to be able to perform these duties to my best ability. I was the ABR liaison to the airport expansion project. I made comments on the development of objective design standards for the city. I've come to believe strongly in site visits, listening to public comments, and those comments of the other board members, as well as staff members who, I want to add,
tirelessly do the planning work and provide succinct and meaningful reports and answers to questions, with a special acknowledgement to William Russell, Nicole Hernandez, and our own planning goddess, Ellen Coquinda. Is the ABR advisory group operating as well as it could? Well, it isn't long until one hears the comment that the planning process is too long, too complex, and under constant change and interpretation. Well, in my personal experience, making a building is a miracle. The gestation period of real estate, banking, marketing, contracting, and inspection does take a number of years and a great deal of faith and energies. A good building that gives back more than it takes to make is miraculous. I believe Santa Barbara has realized a shared ideal that few other cities worldwide have achieved, and we've created a world from our collective imaginations. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Whalen? Thank you very much. Anyone else for Architectural Board of Review? Anybody for the Arts Advisory Committee? Civil Service Commission. There we go. Come forward, please.
Good afternoon, Mayor Rouse and members of council. I am Donna Lewis. I am applying to be reappointed to the Civil Service Commission. And my background is in engineering and law, which means I can be insufferable in two completely different fields. Like the other commission members, I have work experience in employment disputes. I retired from the practice of law, but I still teach at City College. I am willing and able to devote the necessary time to the Civil Service Commission. I am familiar with sections 504 and 508 of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973. I want to thank some staff. Eric Uchida, Graciela Reynoso, and John Doimus have been relentlessly patient and professional. And I also want to thank the other three commissioners because of their commitment to reason, to due process, and to rule of law. So, why do I want to be reappointed? It has to do with rule of law because it has taken a beating lately. Even though studies show that the stronger rule of law is in a nation, the higher their population happiness tends to be. And because I'm a nerd, I can send you that citation if you need it. Rule of law is not the totality of a society's laws. A lot of people, that's what they think it is. It's instead the use of laws to rule, rather than the whims of a warlord, or the impulses of a chief executive, or the caprice of firebrands. So the Civil Service Commission is about applying the relevant laws fairly in order to determine if cause for an employee suspension or termination exists. And I'm happy to answer questions, and if you don't have any, then I would say happy Halloween.
Any question for Ms. Lewis? Ms. Snedden?
Thank you, Mayor Rouse. I'd like to ask longstanding members of their committees if there's any area that you see as a particular challenge or could be an improvement in this particular commission.
Yes.
And
Yes.
if you would want to elaborate, you don't have to, but if you would.
That would be mediation.
Okay.
And adding that to the process so that time and cost can be saved when it's before positions harden and there is still a prayer of the two sides going their separate ways without negative feelings that then go out into the community under circumstances where the city can't respond.
Thank you, and thank you for your service.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Anyone else for Civil Service Commission? Community Development and Human Services Committee. Community Events and Festivals. Come on up.
Hello, Mayor Rouse and members of the City Council. My name is Antoinette Chartier, and I am applying to be reappointed to the Events and Festivals Committee. This would be my second stint in the last couple of decades, and I really enjoy being on the committee because it's a very collaborative effort, and it's a huge amount of trust, I think, that the city places in it. And there's twofold reasons. It's fun because you not only can get mentored, but you can mentor when young people come on and they realize this is very important. It's a return on investment. It's not just a fun little thing to network. Sometimes we have questions as to whether we sprinkle the money out, try to help everybody, or give a little more, try to just help a few people. The process is very, very invigorating. And my experience is laid out, hopefully you have it in front of you, but I have been the president of the Convention and Visitors Bureau. I was a founding member of the Santa Barbara Film Commission back when there was still a stoplight on Cabrillo Boulevard. I'm invested in the community. I really do like to give back. There's no other agenda. I'm actually a conference planner, but all of my conferences are international. They're scientific conferences, so it's very invigorating for me to be in the arts community and represent tourism. And like I said, I come from the days when return on investment was it had to be overnight visitors. It's changed a lot. Now it's adding to the culture of Santa Barbara. And so I've kind of moved around to that train of thought. So it's been a collaborative process for me as well. I do take being on the committee very serious, and like I said, I've enjoyed it. I also appreciate the position of trust that the city gives us. It's not a whole lot of money, but it's enough money where we can feel a lot of gratitude in being able to help the people who come to apply for funds from a myriad of different type of businesses. So that's all I've got. Thank you for giving me this opportunity.
And thank you. Any questions for Ms. Chartier?
Thank you for saying my name correct.
Well, I had to think about it for a minute.
That's it.
Anybody else for community events and festivals? Okay, Creeks Advisory Committee. Yeah, we did that one. Downtown Parking Committee. Harbor Commission. Come on.
Could I ask a question of staff before they speak?
Yes, sir.
Real quick? So on the Harbor Commission, if I'm reading this right, it says that there's 2 vacancies, but only one can be from in the county. Am I reading that right? Or I'm on the wrong one. Are you on Harbor?
Harbor.
Yeah. It says one may be a qualified elector of the county. So we have multiple vacancies, but one would have to be a city resident, and the other ones could be either or.
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Friedman, that's correct.
It would be helpful if, when you're speaking, 'cause I see multiple applicants, if you could just confirm whether you're a City of Santa Barbara resident or outside the city limits. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Freeman, it's not a city resident, it's a qualified elector of the city, just to be clear.
A qualified elector of the city, so you would have to live in the city limits.
You have to be a qualified elector of the city.
You have to be registered to vote within the city, and you have to be registered to vote at your place, at your home.
Correct.
So
Thank you.
If you could confirm that so we know whether you're a qualified elector of the city or you live in the county or other parts of town outside of the county. Thank you.
And with all that being said, who are you?
Well, okay, my name's Rich Smalden. I am a city resident and registered to vote in the city of Santa Barbara. So again, my name's Rich Smalden. I'm here to apply for the Harbor Commission. As someone who has worked in and around the water most of my life, and for the past 13 years, I've worked over at the Sea Center on Stearns Wharf as a manager and now the director of that facility. So I feel like I'm familiar with some of the issues that are facing the waterfront area and seen it over time. There's environmental concerns, maintaining the quality of life and the balance between livelihood and conservation are all some of the important topics that I see and hear. As a resident of Santa Barbara since 1992, I kind of have an appreciation for what it means to live in this special community. As an ocean enthusiast, diver, surfer, father, Navy veteran, graduate of the City College Marine Tech program, and now an ocean educator over at the Sea Center. I also have a degree in business from the University of Southern California and understand the importance of economic factors and strive to balance those with conservation efforts. I'm interested in this opportunity as a way to give something back to the community and participate a little bit more. I don't really have anything specific looking to change, learning a little bit more about cruise ships and the balance between, the fishing community and the recreational community. So I strive for balance and would continue to look for that. And I think it's really important to build a sense of community and continue to foster that. When I moved to Santa Barbara, it really felt like a town and a strong sense of community. And I think that is, helps get us over the bumps of some addressing issues and solving problems. Thank you.
All right, very good. Are there questions for this applicant? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, Harbor Commission.
Good afternoon, Mayor Rouse, council members. I am Jamie Diamond. I own Stardust Sport Fishing in the Santa Barbara Harbor. I'm also one of the new leaseholder for Santa Barbara Landing. I'm the CEO and general manager. And my husband and I have had Stardust Sport Fishing since 1996. We met in the harbor. We've raised our 3 kids there. It is our home and it is our community. However, I do happen to live in Carpinteria. So to that end, I am a qualified elector of outside of the city limits. But I am an active participant in the harbor process, in the Harbor Commission as it is. I have attended meetings for years and participated as a just general public participant, but also as a business holder within the harbor. I believe it's incredibly important that someone who has the viewpoint and sees through the lens of the different user points is on the Harbor Commission. Having outside folks who don't have the same skin in the game, it's important to help balance, but at the same time, I believe that we need to have representation of somebody who is a business owner, who is a recreational user, who takes the time to leave where they live, which is really awesome, to come to the harbor and enjoy themselves, which is what I do. Along with my kids and my husband. I know I'm the best candidate for this position because I have this unique perspective of the various user groups. I'm in the harbor daily. I meet and see and talk with other users of the harbor, whether it be private, commercial, tourists walking by. I have a really easy access point, and it's easy for folks to come and speak with me directly even. I make myself available to those in the harbor as it is. You can look at the waterfront community as an ecosystem. It doesn't need to be seen as competing users. I believe that we can be complementary or symbiotic and look at dealing with issues within the harbor from that lens. I believe that businesses and users would be stronger and benefit more if it was looked through that way. Just because one has a need doesn't mean the other doesn't get their need met. And so that's the lens that I look through. But beyond that, I see the need for future planning for the harbor, looking into the long term, into the future, whether it be these complementary uses as they grow, but also infrastructure with the goal of net zero emissions coming down the future. It's going to currently affect commercial vessels, but also recreational in the future. I believe that we need to be looking at sea level rise and other issues, infrastructure, just going on into the future. Dealing with the daily issues are important, but long-term planning is just as important.
Thank you. Are there questions from Ms. Nyman? Just the one. Are you registered to vote in the county?
Yes. Carpinteria.
That was for you, Mr. Friedman. Anyone else for Harbor Commission? Mr. Nelson.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. Thank you very much for allowing me to be Harbor Commissioner for the last 4 years. I'm here today to thank you, but also to ask that you consider giving me a second term. The questions I were given focused on achievements and opportunities or improvements that could be made. My achievements are tied to my experience. I'm probably right now the only person on the commission with an extensive background in public land management, development, planning, and acquisition. And I tried to use that experience and buttress that by doing the research on the laws and regulations that affect the governance of the harbor and, more importantly, the waterfront. I was very active in 3 committees. I was chair of the Commercial Fisheries Committee, chair of the Business Activity Permit Committee, and also a member of a SLIP Policy Assignment Committee. All of those committees were not created at the whim of this body or the Harbor Commission itself. They were a response and a result of, in some cases, a public outcry. One committee, the Business Activity Committee, was responding to a feud, if you will, between Santa Barbara Landing and Santa Barbara Outdoor Adventures. We had some old policy that needed to be looked at. There was a congestion problem that should be addressed, and we actually worked with the department to accomplish that. The Slip Transfer Committee, everybody was complaining about how we set those rates and what those rates were. And so what we did is we spent a long time together with staff to figure out what is our policy, how do we set that? And we learned that the policy was not clear, and in fact, it was actually unfair. Small boats or small boat slip holders were paying more than large boat slip holders. So we've adjusted that, and it was accepted by recommendation of the full commission to try to approach setting that fee based on fair market, on the market value of that slip transfer, and then a percentage of that as opposed to just saying we're going to charge a higher rate in these categories. And finally, with an announcement, I want to talk a little bit about the Commercial Fisheries Group. It was created completely as a request of the City Council. We reapproached you as a Harbor Commission and asked for guidance because of the cost of real estate, because the focus was on infrastructure and zoning to accommodate coastal dependent uses like the seafood industry and commercial fishing. When we came back to you in 2020, you basically not only reconfirmed that, but added to that a new dimension, allow a nonprofit organization to try to lead the acquisition and secure financing to do that in partnership with the city. I am happy here today to say that Santa Barbara City College on the 9th of this month will in fact approve a memorandum of understanding between the commercial fishermen of Santa Barbara and the college to basically do what is known as an academic industry partnership. We're basically going to have on the edge of the channel, you're going to have the industry and the commercial fleet being provided with some storage at Santa Barbara City College, as well as this.
Mr. Nelson, we're actually kind of over time.
A workforce development project that will try to train employees of the blue economy and the marine trades industry. So when they leave the college, they've got a job to go to. So it's a happy moment for us, and I appreciate your allowing me to be a member. I'd love to do it for another 4 years.
Thank you. Are there questions for Mr. Nelson? All right, very good. Any other applicants for the Harbor Commission? Historical Landmarks Commission. Housing Authority Commission. The Library Board. Neighborhood Advisory Council. Parks and Recreation Commission. Wow, getting down to the end here. Planning Commission. I know we got somebody out there for that.
Good afternoon. Happy Halloween, Mayor and Council. I have a brief statement to read, and then I think I have a response to one of the questions that was sent over. So as most of you know, have been urged by several people in the community to ask for this position. You've received numerous correspondence to that effect. Most of you know me and have had an opportunity to review my background and qualifications. As a resident who's had the privilege, along with my wife, James Santos Sweeney, to raise our now grown children, Pablo and Marisol, to live in this beautiful city for 46 years, it's an honor to be considered for service on the Planning Commission in its 100th year of service. If appointed, I want to follow in the footsteps of the many past and current members of this commission by adhering to the foundation set for us by the likes of Bernard Hoffman, Pearl Chase, and others. The Planning Commission and those who helped make this city what it is known worldwide for. Over the next few years, as we address the challenge of lack of housing for all who work and live here, I will continue to be concerned about how these projects touch the ground within the existing town's footprint. Our focus, as others who preceded us, is to find solutions to maintain and allow for the next generation to prosper. I'm committed to working with the Commission to serve Santa Barbara as a Planning Commissioner and would appreciate your support. And I'll take the last minute to respond to one of the questions that was put forth. Is the City Advisory Group operating where it should be? I will tell you that as our current set of national politics continues to be divergent, one of the chores of a planning commissioner is to, and anyone representing the city of Santa Barbara, is to allow for decorum and a way to talk civilly on all kinds of issues. And that's difficult. And I'm probably the worst candidate for that. But my wife has said, count to 10, take a deep breath, and move forward. So I'm hoping that that will be one thing that we can continue to try to improve as 7 planning commissioners. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there questions for Mr. Sweeney?
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Planning Commission, anyone else? All right, Rental Housing Mediation Board. Ms. Patino?
Good afternoon, Mayor Rose and City Council members. I'm Teresa Patino. I live in the city of Santa Barbara, and I am a landlord in the city of Santa Barbara and county of Santa Barbara. I'm applying for becoming a board member for the housing mediation. I've been there for 1 year and 3 months. My time is up in 2 months, so that's why I'm reapplying. I've been going to all the board meetings. I've attended a few mediations. I think it's a wonderful program. Andrea Bifano does a wonderful job. She's a great leader. She's very impartial, with both parties. And I would just like to learn more about what's happening in the city and learn how to be a mediation and maybe help more in the future, if possible, with it. So that's that.
All right, very good. Are there questions for Ms. Patino?
No,
Thank you very much. Anyone else for the Rental Housing Mediation Task Force? Please come forward.
Ms. Luberfido has given you copies of her comments, so I'll pass those out for you.
Okay, thank you. You can just pull that, yeah. Ready to go.
Hello, everybody.
All right, please.
Wait for the clock. Well, good afternoon, Mayor and City Council members. My name is Marilyn Loperfido. I have kind of stuck to the questions, and I don't know if I could wing it the way Teresa did. But for one thing, I am totally able to devote the time to this committee and the outside mediations that we need to do. I'm self-employed. I have been I'm just going to say it's been interesting today because I served on the special events, the events in the committee that was here. I was an alternate and then brought up to fill a vacancy. And I just think it's interesting that what we do is mediation, when that was also mentioned today. So I've been an elected member of the Santa Barbara Arts and Crafts Show Advisory Committee on and off for the past 35 years. Some of you may recognize me as also speaking on behalf of our show when there are important matters. I think it's important, why do we want to be appointed to this advisory group? And my reason is I've been a strong advocate for fairness my whole life, greatly influenced by my upbringing. And I also had an experience where I saw that a court-appointed mediator was not a fair mediator. So because of that experience is what brought me to the Rental Housing and Mediation Board. The interests and issues, and also I should mention that, yes, I am a registered voter in the city, and our committee has a really interesting makeup of owners, property managers, and tenants, and we have a certain number of seats for each one of those. And so I am one of the tenants. I believe housing is a right and not a privilege, and we have abnormally high rate rents in this city. I think one of the downsides, I'm going to be out of time, is that we lose a really high proportion in flight of one of the most important demographic populations in our city, and that's kind of that's the professional, from after college to retirement, kind of anyone who's not in the service industry. So what's interesting is, with my background, I've had experience with both the public and the private sectors. So I just think, well, I'll move on. We've had plenty of training. We have a lot of mediation training. So also headed by Andrea Bufano, who's pretty amazing. And then I'll just say one last thing, which is, what's the most significant or rewarding experience? The significant has been understanding the rental demographics of our city, but the rewarding part is really important. And part of that was exemplified by the housing event, the City Housing Day that we had at De La Guerra Plaza, where we get to meet people. So we're face to face with people who have problems, be landlord or a renter. And I just thought that was really, really incredible to have that experience. So the only way I feel we could do better is if we had another staff person, but I understand that that's probably not going to happen. But I guess that's about it. I had a little more in my
All right, thank you. Out of the questions
report.
for Ms. Candidate. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Anyone else for the Rental Housing Mediation Board? Santa Barbara Youth Council.
Good afternoon, Mayor Rouse and members of the City Council. My name is Kavya Suresh. I'm 17 years old, and I'm a senior at San Marcos Senior High School. I was born and raised in Santa Barbara, California my whole life, and I'm actually pre-registered to vote in the 2024 election, which is pretty exciting, in the city of Santa Barbara. I am seeking reappointment to the Santa Barbara Youth Council. I served a full term and was appointed vice chair by my peers, and I was part of the team that orchestrated the event Coffee with a Council Member, which we had Councilmember Gutierrez and Councilmember Sneddon actually participate. It was an incredible opportunity for youth in the community to directly voice their concerns and advocate their rights and their privileges to important members of our city elected. And also we had our chief of police and nonprofit leaders as well. So I wanted to bring that up because I think one of my greatest skills is community organizing, and I think that's something that Santa Barbara Youth Council has definitely strived to improve, especially coming out of COVID, coming out of virtual events, creating a presence in our community as youth representatives. We all represent a demographic, whether that be students from our specific schools, students from our neighborhood. We all bring specific lenses and perspectives to the table, and I really think it's important to get all of those voices and thoughts and lived experiences represented and considered in the deliberations we have as Youth Council. I also worked on making youth council more accessible, creating our social media platforms to interact with youth, using platforms and using methods that are relevant to youth and to their usage. So we worked on improving our social media. We worked on having in-person events that were active. We worked on outreach. We worked on recruitment. We worked on connecting with the different schools in our area, to junior highs, to high schools, making youth council a known entity of representatives. And again, I bring all this up just to emphasize that with my skills in community organizing, with my experience, I also serve as ASB president at San Marcos Senior High, so I know what it's like to be a leader, I know what it's like to organize, and I know what it's like to have plans and execute them properly. And I also am just really honored to even be considered for this position. The youth on Youth Council are such incredible people and truly inspire me to be a better version of myself every day. So with that in mind, I hope you all consider me for another term. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there questions for this candidate? All right, thank you. Anyone else for Santa Barbara Youth Council? Sister Cities Board? Water Commission? Mr. Young.
Good afternoon, Mayor Rouse, members of the council. My name is Jeff Young. I've always been at the bottom of the alphabet in school, and now with the Water Commission, it happens all over again. Good afternoon. I'm seeking reappointment to the Water Commission. I've been on for 4 years. I am a 42-year resident of the city and vote in the city. I come to this position from a rather unique perspective. I spent nearly 20 years on the state's Regional Water Quality Control Board in San Luis Obispo, which regulates the city's various state and federal water-related permits. And from that perspective, I got to see the world of water from the regulator side, and now coming and being on the Water Commission, I get to look under the hood and see what's going on within a municipality. And I just want to say that we have really good staff. I am impressed with the job that Mr. Hagmark does and the people that work under him, the briefings that we get, the presentations we get. These folks pay attention to detail. They have their eyes on the horizon. They're also ready to act when there are emergencies, and I am just impressed by what they do. And when I was on the water board, I often marveled at the exceedingly few instances where the city of Santa Barbara came before the water board for almost anything that wasn't on the consent calendar. And now I know why. Well, one, we have resources, which is a big plus, but also we have really good staff. And if there was something I could offer, Ms. Sneddon, in terms of how we can do a better job, I would let you know, because you're our liaison. And I don't know where that is right now. So you better appoint me for another 4 years so I can continue looking for things to uncover. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there questions for Mr. Young?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mayor, council members. My name is Arturo Keller. I'm a professor at the University of California in Santa Barbara, and I've served on the Water Commission since 2018, predating just a little bit Mr. Young. It's been a real pleasure for me to be on the committee, commission. It's enjoyable to work with the city staff. They do a fantastic job. But more importantly, I feel like I really contribute to the committee. I feel like they hear our voices, they hear what we say. And we also get a lot out, in my opinion, because of the fact that it's real life issues that we're dealing with. So it's really important for us to do that. It's also very enjoyable to see that many of our alums are in the Water Resources group. So it's really a very good relationship going back and forth. With the current situation that we have with so much water in our reservoirs, for the first time in a long time, I almost felt like maybe it's the time for me to quit while we're ahead. But I decided no, because we still have plenty of issues: climate change, affordability, infrastructure renewal, many, many issues that require our attention. and good advice and whatever we can do in terms of helping the city with that. So with that, I'll leave it open to any questions you may have.
All right, thank you very much. Are there questions? Ms. Sneddon?
Thank you. I just wanted to ask you to highlight, maybe you have a little bit been a liaison with UCSB students and research, and could you just tell us a little bit about that partnership?
Yeah, I think that's a great partnership. We've been able to work a lot on different topics that the city has. I bring those topics to our students. We sometimes have created small research projects around those, bring that information back to the city. So it's a really good advisory. So it's not just myself, it's also having access to all those resources that we have at the university. And I think that's really useful for the commission as well. So thank you very much for the question.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, very good. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And with that, do we have anybody else that's applying for a position that haven't called? Very good.
Mayor Rouse, could I ask Mr. Lopez follow-up question? Are there truly 3 openings on the Water Commission?
Mayor Rouse, Councilmember Sneddon, as far as I know, that's correct, yes.
Okay, so we should be recruiting, I suppose. Okay, thank you.
All right, very good. That'll wrap it up for our interviews for this time. Any council or staff communications or engagements? Mr. Gutierrez.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I attended the 50th anniversary of the Santa Barbara City College Study Abroad program, met with the Santa Barbara Martin Luther King Committee, attended the 18th Annual Mayor's Awards, attended the Assistance League 75th anniversary, the Santa Barbara City College Trunk or Treat, the honoring of muralist Manuel Unzueta at City College, attended the Westmont What to Do About State Street, attended the Braille Institute's open house, the PAL Trunk or Treat, and traveled to Chinatown in LA with our Sister Cities group. Attended the 2nd annual Sri Lankan Film Festival, New Beginnings Gala, and spoke at UCSB to some political science majors, and then also attended the PATH Dia de los Muertos ceremony.
All right, thank you. Anybody else?
Thank you, Mayor Rouse. I also attended the tribute to Manuel Unzueta, and that was put on by City College and through a program called Raíces First Year and Beyond, and that's one of the proud instances that I'm also a Raíces instructor, so that was a really great overlap. I led a beach geology walk for the Riviera Association. That was well attended. And to mention, I'm so sorry I missed the Mayor Awards, but I'd like to congratulate the Airport Sunflower Program and Gracie Fisher also for her just incredible contributions to the community. And also just a word of support for Sojourner Roll Kincaid in hospice, and thinking of her and her family.
All right, thank you. Ms. Gutierrez, go ahead.
Yeah. I attended the Ceylon Film Festival closing ceremony. We gave a recognition for the film festival and the founders. I was also there for the recognition award night for Manuel Unzueta, and I also attended the PAL Trunk or Treat, which was really fun.
All right, Mr. Friedman.
Thank you. I attended the Long Range Development Oversight Committee, and we discussed the average unit density program. Among the big topics, Central Coast Water Authority, our monthly meeting, and there is a lot of water in the state of California. A year ago, you couldn't find a drop, and now it's hard to offload it. So, but it's a good problem to have. And then also attended the Sea Level Rise local government working group committee that I'm a part of with the Coastal Commission and local governments, and we're just looking at our work plan for next year. And then also volunteered with my son as part of the San Marcos High School Apple Academy, had their Day of Caring volunteer where the students went to different locations and they volunteered with Bucket Brigade, Special Olympics, Hillside House, Path, and Flower and Power. And then lastly, this is the only time that me and Councilmember Stenheim can know, because we came on the same time, that Halloween actually falls on a council meeting, and it's the only time in the whole going forward or backwards, so it's kind of cool. And I gotta say, I said it earlier, but Mr. Mayor, you get best costume with that Walter Matthau look. So with that, have a happy and safe Halloween, everyone.
With that, yeah, hope you have nice trick-or-treating there, son.